Good evening, everybody. It is July 17th, 2007. No, wait, was it 2021? But we're just getting started here tonight on Super Mater Brothers Podcasting. I have to remember what show I'm on. I'm Dave Mater. Welcome. And I'm joined with my brother, Jeff Mater, the other namesake of Super Mater Brothers Podcasting. And to round out this trio of timekeepers, we got Jaemeel Robinson as well.
The variant Mater.
Yes, the variant,
yeah.
the Boastville Mater, we'll say, perhaps. We are all here today to talk about the first season of Loki as we continue our coverage here on Super Mater Brothers Podcasting for all the MCU content that's come out since 2021, at least, starting with WandaVision. And now this is our fourth podcast as we continue our coverage. And yeah, we're going to talk about Loki. Jeff, this is the first one you're joining us for, I believe, right? You weren't, or were you in on Black Widow? I don't think so. No. So
I mean, I watched it.
You watched it. You watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and you've watched WandaVision.
Yep.
And now Loki.
Yep.
And let's maybe just a quick roundtable because Jeff, you asked to be on this. You're like, I want to talk Loki, and I was like, well, we're going to cover it. You were maybe, you were into maybe a week to week. I would have, but I was also had other things going on. So, Jeff, Loki, what are you thinking?
Like just in general, or like
just like a hot take. As before we get into we'll go episode by episode and we'll talk about all the different characters and the plot and everything else. But did you enjoy this?
This is the best television show I've seen on TV since like the early Game of Thrones time. Like for me, like this is what I want out of a TV show. A TV show that takes me for twists and turns, always keeps me guessing, brings in lots of great references from all sorts of different places, really kind of makes them come together in a great cohesive way. And for me, I love I like anti-heroes, like that maybe some of my favorite characters throughout movies and TV shows in general. And Loki's kind of like the ultimate anti-hero in Marvel. And for them to not only use Tom Hiddleston, but bring in lots of different variants and have a real fun with the character. I think it was a really great idea to bring in the TVA, do all the time travel stuff. Just fantastic. I have really almost no complaints about this TV show.
Okay, well, let's talk about maybe the parts you liked about it the most. But Jaemeel, let's go over to you next because, you've been on all these Marvel podcasts to date, and we've liked certain things and we haven't liked certain things. But where does Loki sort of rank in the pantheon for you?
I like Loki, so I'm gonna cut to the chase in terms of that bit of information. But at the same time, I appreciate it in terms of the amount of world building it does. At the same time, it doesn't sacrifice itself to that world building, which you kind of see in a lot of things where it's just shuffling pieces around on a big board, and the season ends with just the whoever's shuffling the pieces just kind of stepping back. And that's supposed to be the conclusion of the series, which I kind of felt that Falcon and the Winter Soldier ended up doing, as opposed to telling a really cohesive story from beginning to end. Loki, the only issues are as a result of the fact that it is a more than one season tale, and therefore, even though we don't get a definite ending or what people were expecting a definite ending, it's just the end to the chapter of the
a bit of a cliffhanger to end this first season, and maybe not as completely fulfilling as maybe the other series, which were more standalone-ish.
I didn't think that the other series were as fulfilling as this one. Even the fact that there wasn't really an ending, it was still more fulfilling than the previous ones.
Okay. Now let's get into maybe the content. But Jeff, did you have a thought before we get into anything else?
So like kind of what Jaemeel just said there, like the other two, like WandaVision and Falcon, they knew they were ending their show like after that whatever amount of episodes, 6 or 9. So yeah, Loki's different. It's a different thing. It's we don't know the end of the story yet, so it's hard to judge it based on there's no finale to it yet. So
like maybe to your Game of Thrones point, Jeff. We can be let down, even though this first season was pretty good.
Yes, but I trust the Marvel people way more than I trust the double D's
DNS. DNS.
Yeah, let's talk about those Marvel people, because this show is a spin-off, technically, of Avengers Endgame, more specifically, and is one of many properties that have come out of like maybe this new phase. Are we in phase 4, Jaemeel? Now of Marvel. 4. So phase 4 is the post Endgame Marvel, which includes all these Disney Plus shows and this ever expanding universe. We even start. That's how this show started. It starts with this scene right out of Endgame, which I'm going the wrong way. That basically says like, okay, this is Loki up until Avengers 1, which is set in 2012, but we saw that that character runs off with the Tesseract because they were planning to steal that to reverse the blip and the snap and everything. But Loki didn't get too far, and he gets captured by this TVA, which we find out is like the time travel or the timeline police, and everything else. And so maybe we can get into this first episode maybe a bit more specifically, which was called Glorious Purpose, which I feel like is the breaking of the Loki character, because as mentioned, this is not the same Loki that dies in Avengers Infinity War. It is and it isn't. It's not that he hasn't lived those, I guess, 6 years that would come in between there and up until his death. And there was a lot of things I came into.
Alleged death. We don't know if he died.
Yep. Well, alleged death, because even the classic Loki says, yeah, well, I faked my death. So
right,
it's plausible. It's plausible that the other Loki did too. But he looked pretty dead to me. So, but who knows?
Looks can be deceiving.
So yeah, even just like what we knew coming into this show, and knowing as comic book fans, Jaemeel, what were you sort of expecting out of this? Like coming in, was what were you just drawn to this idea of like, okay, we're gonna have a Tom Hiddleston Loki show? I'm in no matter what. And as you were seeing some of like the pictures and the images coming in, knowing that Mobius was going to be a character, and then played by Owen Wilson. What was your reaction?
It seemed to be the most high concept of the series, because I could already wrap my head around WandaVision due to other series or shows like Stay Tuned and so and such. So kind of being trapped inside of a program isn't that difficult, and having, they really put the concept of the show spread over 3 episodes for WandaVision to kind of tell that tale. For this one, the trailer kind of set the stage for what exactly this series was going to be, and they did it in a way that I felt did not give away of what the show was going to eventually evolve into. I was looking forward to this show. The actors involved, Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston, and it had a tone that seemed extremely different. So I was extremely excited for this series.
Yeah, because like some of these comic book characters like Rowena, what's her name? Rowena? No, Ravona Renslayer, Judge Renslayer, and a couple of the others I'm not as familiar with. I'm a comic book guy. I'm a Marvel guy,
Mobius,
I'm not as up to speed on who he is, or a lot of these characters, but I know Loki, and I'm very familiar there. And so this whole kind of he ends up in Mongolia, and then he gets captured and pretty quickly by Hunter number, what's her name?
B-15? Or is
she B-15, as played by Wunmi Mosoku, where he gets like punched in the face, Jeff.
I have a question about that. Why? Okay, when he grabbed the Tesseract, right? He transported himself. Why did he go to Mongolia? Like, why wasn't he able to control where he went?
I think he just wanted to go anywhere, right? When he hit that thing,
as far as possible.
I guess. Why Mongolia? Like, it doesn't make any why could he
other side of the planet?
Like, I guess he had no choice about where he went. but I guess he, so he's not able to control the Tesseract. Is that how, like, what?
Well, he was, but he couldn't speak at this time. He had this muzzle on his mouth, and I don't know what that. I don't really know how you use a Tesseract exactly to open a wormhole. But Loki, yeah, he was just kind of like he wanted to get somewhere.
Yeah, it was just an escape. Yeah, I understand that, but I guess, yeah, I don't understand how the Tesseract works. Like, if you could decide where to go, because Thanos, when he had the glove on, he could decide where to go.
But this only happened because Ant-Man hit the case, and then Hulk bashed into the other Tony Stark, and whatever.
It all happened because the Hulk took the stairs.
Yeah, but that happened in the original timeline too. It was just that Tony Stark got hit, and then he had the Tesseract because he was stealing it. So then it ended up there. But in the original timeline, they just walked out of this building.
It isn't that he got hit; it's that they shorted out his chest plate, and then he dropped the briefcase. Ant-Man knocked the briefcase over to Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man from.
That's when they changed it. Yeah.
But Robert Downey Jr., or rather Tony Stark, should have remembered that Hulk was going to come out of that door at that moment.
But maybe they were already
he wasn't in that position.
Yeah, maybe they had already left the building by the time the Hulk did that in the original timeline.
Maybe.
Okay. Dave, 4 years ago, do you remember when? Yeah. ... You can't remember. He was talking to, at that point, Robert Redford's character at that time, and having that argument. So he's far away from where the other side of the
yeah. Well, I'm not saying he was right standing there and he would remember, but it was not. It was a sloppy operation, I want to say. This time heist, but whatever.
Recon first before they actually went through with it.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that maybe more the question is like once this Loki ends up in front of Judge Renslayer later in the first episode, and she goes, "Yeah, those Avengers, that was all part of the plan. What their time travel was fine, but every other time travel is bad."
Right. No, they don't necessarily say that, because there's other like time travel that occurs. Right, so isn't what Doctor Strange does a form of time travel? Isn't Doctor Strange peeking into like the different and living through the different versions of how Endgame plays out? Isn't that a form of time travel?
Perhaps. I know that they're going to I know there was just a meeting at Marvel and Creative somewhat recently where they had to kind of figure out what are the rules about the multiverse, what are the rules about the timelines. I think that they have established some of that already, but they're still, as they're expanding more and more into this, and we're getting this like Doctor Strange, the madness, the multiverse of madness, WandaVision, and where that's headed, with at least with the Scarlet Witch character. I think that they're going full multiverse, and I think that they need to look at shows like maybe like what the Berlanti DC universe did on TV and the CW as some cautionary things of what not to do, because this can all get very confusing very fast.
Well, I do take your point, but what I get from that type of meeting occurring is that the movies that we have that just started production don't necessarily involve the multiverse, or the ramifications totally with a multiverse. So that means after Multiverse of Madness and Spider-Man No Way Home, there's still going to be a multiversal aspect that's still going to be in play. So people should understand that Doctor Strange isn't going to solve the multiverse issue, and neither is Spider-Man. So they should have that already in their head.
First of all, it's called the Multiverse of Madness. So, like, it's not going to make complete sense. I don't think, it's madness.
Madness is in the title, so it's implied.
It's not going to get solved, though.
Right.
No, not solved. But when you saw this, even when you saw Endgame the first time, Jeff, were you excited when you saw this whole Loki variant, which we'll come to find out in this episode what a variant is? But we didn't really know that. We just saw, like, okay, Loki died. His arc was kind of over in Infinity War. It seemed like his sacrifice and his redemption was done. And then this time travel thing opened this door for Tom Hiddleston to come back into the Loki character, but another version of him, like a multiverse version of him. Did that intrigue you? Did that excite you, or were you sort of like indifferent to it?
No, I really liked it. Loki is one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Any character that can straddle the line between villain and hero in Marvel is very difficult to do. And he did it. Like, he literally killed Coulson, stabbed him through the back, and we still like him in Thor Ragnarok. We still, you know what I mean? And he's still a bad guy in Thor Ragnarok.
He's done some pretty villainous things.
Yeah,
which they remind us of in this episode too, quite a bit.
Absolutely.
They don't try to sugarcoat his past infractions, which I feel like in lesser capable hands, they were kind of like, well, there's like, explain it away. It's like, no. He did everything that occurred. He is the same bad dude that you saw in Avengers 1, right? But there is personal growth as opposed to just kind of, well, the plot needs to be served that Loki's a good guy at this point, right? No, it's character growth. That's the difference.
Well, he has the arc. His arc in these 6 episodes is right there. He's the title character.
Let me ask you this, guys, because this came up in a different podcast I was listening to. What arc do you like more? The arc that goes to Endgame or Infinity War where Loki dies, the Ragnarok, that timeline, or this new timeline that we're getting? Which version of the character do you like more?
Well, I think that this new version, who got to see, albeit a condensed version of what that had, right? He got to see, like, this is what quick, very like Cole's Notes version, not Coulson. Cole's Notes. Coulson Notes. They were like, yeah, well, you went home and then you kind of told your mom off, but then you kind of led some dark elves that got her killed, and then you were kind of a dick for a while, but then you kind of came around and worked with Thor, and then there was Ragnarok, but then you died in Thanos.
Yeah. You also sent the dark elves to kill your mom.
Yeah. So you're kind of like this complex person, but yeah, you were meant to go on and do these other things, which is the other part of where this Loki has to consider. He can't go back to his timeline and go back to this life that he was going to have. That was
supposedly.
So. What do you mean supposedly?
Well, kind of jumping to episode 6, Miss Minutes talks about inserting him back into the timeline, right? Although albeit with changes. But even giving that sort of deal kind of indicates that there is the ability to, place someone in a timeline of some sort, or the part of the sacred timeline.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, sure. But but
we don't necessarily know if she was being genuine or not.
Yeah, and I don't think so. I don't feel like that was a legitimate offer, but we'll see. We can talk about that. Well, we're still in episode 1.
Yep.
So yeah. Okay. There was his whole arrest sequence too, like him getting processed and put through the thing, and like this whole beginning of the episode, like him getting punched in that whole, like, his face in Jello mode and going through this bureaucracy. I particularly like the scene with Casey, as played by Eugene Cordero from Star Trek Lower Decks, who played
Pillboy.
I don't know Pillboy, but yes, I know you know it. So okay, it's and he's very, like, just where he's like the receptionist, he's just the desk guy. And they go,
receptionist.
He's a receptionist. Well, okay, fine. He's a receptionist.
There you go.
Just that whole banter. He's a very funny character in the show, and I thought we didn't get enough of his character in this. Where he's like, "What's this?" It's like, it's the Tesseract. Be very careful with it. He's like, "It sounds dumb."
It sounds dumb. You guys almost killed me. Like, yeah, he has a bunch of great lines in this, especially in the first episode. Yeah, like, what's a fish?
What's a fish? I wanted to know what I'm being threatened with before I agree to anything. Yeah, I thought, like, just this very fast sequence where this it's a very humbling experience too here for Loki, right? Because he keeps going through, like, this processing. He's coming off of, like, him at his most, like, egotistical, trying to invade New York. and take on the Avengers in part one. Going through all this, he's not having a great day through most of this. You see the whole thing with the ticket where he has to like hold up the ticket because that
I love the guy that gets pruned.
Pruned.
Yeah, I love that guy. He's like, "What are you gonna do, Buckethead?"
Yeah, he's like a Goldman Sachs guy or something, and he gets pruned. But we thought at this point we don't know what pruned is. So it looked like he was just disintegrated.
Yeah.
And he sees I think he's the first one we see disintegrated. And the other thing we did mention was that when they first picked up Loki in Mongolia, right as they were about to walk through the door, they set off that little charge, and he's trying to watch what's going to happen, but he can't see it. So there's a bit of mystery. There's things we're learning as we're going, and there's things we're sort of, left ambiguous. But he goes through this. He has to like say everything he ever said. They tear off his fine Asgardian leather. All those kinds of things, and then he ends up eventually in front of Judge Renslayer, who says, "You are guilty of crimes against the sacred timeline." He's like, "Nope," because we also had the video with Miss Minutes,
yes.
While he was in the lineup, explaining like, "Hey, you are accused of crimes against the sacred timeline," and she just has this.
You're being charged for being a criminal of the sacred timeline. Played by Tara Strong, the amazing Tara Strong.
Canadian.
Yeah. She's very good in this. And a lot of her character's like cheery subposition is very interesting compared to her more calculated and maniacal role, perhaps, in some of this, as we'll get to. But like, the whole fact that there was this time war and a multiversal war, and that there was all this craziness happened. We had to straight it down. That's why the TVA comes. And I'm kind of like, I'm tracking along. I'm like, okay, yeah, it sounds like something that could happen.
I have a few things here. Like I have a few quotes from the director here, from Kate Herron, that I just like when we bring up a character, I just like to say what the director said about the character real quick.
And which character do you want to talk about?
All right, we'll start with Miss Minutes. Okay, so she said, all right, so the animated anthropomorphic clock mascot of the TVA, Strong voices Miss Minutes with a southern drawl, which Herron felt was a representation of Waldron, since he is from the southern United States. After being created solely to introduce the TVA, the writers found more ways to include Miss Minutes in the series since they found her to be a fun character. Her design was inspired by Felix the Cat and other cartoons from the early 20th century, with Herron calling Miss Minutes a Roger Rabbit kind of character. Strong felt that the dire information Miss Minutes is tasked with conveying was the perfect mix of who she is, and since it is said with a smile on her face, Miss Minutes has a protective relationship to He Who Remains, with Strong believing she understands how important her role is and how important it is to the universe. So I think that's really interesting because she's not a comic book character. This is totally invented for the show, and I think it's worth bringing up what was inspired, why they made this character.
And in episode 2, Loki asks her, like, "Are you a sentient being, or are you a recording?" And she goes, "Both."
She says sort of both. So she doesn't really answer the question.
Yeah, but like this whole setup, you're kind of like, what is going on, and how weird this show is going to be right off the bat, and it's gonna not be grounded like a Black Widow or something like that. It's very much in like the timey-wimey Doctor Who kind of territory.
Yes,
really.
Doctor Who, Wizard of Oz, there's so many different things they're drawing from in this show, and that's what I love about it so much. That's why I kind of brought up the Game of Thrones reference, because Game of Thrones also drew from so many different things and then compiled it into one massive medieval fantasy show. And this is kind of doing the same thing, but with time travel, which is even better for me personally, because I'm not a big medieval guy. I much prefer sci-fi time travel stuff,
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about this whole this trial where he tries to say it was the Avengers' fault that this happened. I was like, yeah, you're right. It was the Avengers' fault, Loki. Sort of. But why were they supposed to do that? Why is that part of the sacred timeline?
It's bullshit. It's made up. That's my theory. I think that's completely made up. She doesn't know. She doesn't actually know the truth yet.
Renslayer? You think that this is just like she's just being a bureaucrat and she's just like dismissive and making some kind of weird thing?
Yes, she dictates the flow of time according to their dictations. Yet she doesn't. She just goes and talks to some robots, which we'll get to. But
maybe we should talk about. Maybe we should also I think we should touch on her now too.
Yep.
Because this was her introduction. Where's
I have a Kate Herron quote about her if you want me to go through it.
Yeah, sorry, I have it here. So I just want to get So Ravona Renslayer, she shows up in this like trial scene up in the first episode, like after he's gone through all the processing and everything else, and he's like, well, I'm not guilty of crimes against the timeline, and I want to talk to the timekeepers, and she's like, they're busy, whatever, and so it seems like the process is they come through. I don't know why they have a trial. It seems like everyone's guilty and everyone gets pruned, right?
It's like a Cardassian trial.
Yeah, it's like I don't understand. I think just because they want a bureaucracy and so they go through the motions here.
So yes and no, because the understanding is that as we later learn about who the TVA is consisted of, absolutely they would have a trial
because they
to
want to
determine if the
Yeah.
person would be able to be molded into the flock per se.
Because it's also recruitment. They take these
Yeah.
variants, but then they reprogram them.
That's
And-
why they didn't delete him, because Mobius says, "Hey, I know what he's capable of," and then they go, "Fine."
Yeah,
You know,
but just imagine if he threw himself to the mercy of the court, right, and was humbled or begging to not be pruned or deleted or to be saved, right? Maybe it would have been a different conversation that occurred. The only two examples we have is Goldman and Sachs douchebag, and Loki, who's very high in his own supply. So not really two team players that you would automatically think you'd want them to continue on in the TVA. So
Right.
we're only seeing it through a lens of a specific example. So we don't know how exactly.
Well, and we also saw Sylvie's, I guess, trial, if you want to call it that, too, right? When she was a child and she was
Right.
first picked up.
Okay, a couple of things about this Ravona Renslayer character. First of all, the actress playing her, Juju Mbatha-Raw, she's like super British. Like I saw an interview of her. What a fantastic performance that she gives.
Yeah.
I
Her
don't
accent's
even.
pretty flawless, I'd
It's
say.
gone. Like I believe she's American. I never even for a second think she's British, and what's just so. She's classically trained. She went to the same school as Tom Hiddleston. She was like a year behind him or ahead of him or something. But
She's
anyway,
the same age as him, too. Yeah.
yeah. So director Kate Herron compared both Mbatha-Raw and Renslayer to chameleons and said Renslayer was always trying to dance the line with Mobius of being his superior and his friend. Herron added that Mbatha-Raw brought a warmth to Renslayer while also channeling her pain. Loki explores the origins of Renslayer, which predates the character's appearances in the comics, and Mbatha-Raw enjoyed being able to start something fresh with the character. Mbatha-Raw called Renslayer incredibly ambitious and felt that there was the ultimate personality clash between her and Loki. She continued that Renslayer has a lot on her shoulders and has to make morally ambiguous choices, which forces the character to keep secrets and build layers. Waldron, who's the writer of the show, believed that Renslayer had the making of a very complex villain. So that's kind of like the take from the writer and director.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Jaemeel, do you know much about the comic book Ravona Renslayer?
Not really, outside of her connection to
Mr. Kang? Mr. Richards?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Oh,
And
yeah.
I do like the concept, because I do actually believe that concept applies in this case, that the writer was talking about Ravona being the predated comic book version. She does not necessarily have the ties to Kang as the comic book really emphasized, and we can kind of see what leads her to that, or the beginnings of what led her to that type of relationship as well.
Okay. I thought she was very impressive in the show, and I thought the question is also, as we segue to maybe the other character who we meet in this trial scene, which is Mobius. Why do Ramona and him, why do they get names and everyone else is a number, or like a letter and a number? Like B15 and C20 or whatever, but Mobius has a name, and so does Ravona. Although we saw in the flashback, Ravona was once known as like A12 or something like that.
A23, which is a reference to the first comic book appearance of Ravona Renslayer.
It could be that the length of time she's been with the TVA, she has moved up to a different role per se, and thus had a different name. So
is it like when you get promoted to detective, you're in the plain clothes, and then you don't have to. But if you're in uniform,
we see 2 instances of that, and we're gonna see what's happening after that, because, as mentioned, we know that.
And Casey has a name, so it's only if you wear that tactical gear, it seems you have like
Well, people switch roles, because what we learn in the last episode is Casey is no longer behind a desk, but is now an agent.
Did we learn that? Did I miss that?
Yes,
if you're, I think if you are a hunter, you have a number.
Yes. Yeah.
If you are a hunter,
yes.
So we have Hunter B15 and we have Hunter C20.
Yes.
Okay. So that's more of a hunter thing.
And Ravona Renslayer, I'm guessing, was just called A23 when she was A23.
Yeah.
But eventually she would have had to choose a name.
Yes, because so here's the deal. Her real name in the timeline where she was plucked from is she was a vice principal at a school in Fremont, Ohio in 2018, and they learned that her real name is Rebecca Torminet.
Yeah, Torment.
Okay, it makes no sense to me why they get these names, but I want to talk. Let's talk about Mobius and Owen Wilson, because I was really excited when I heard Owen Wilson was going to be part of this show. I thought he's maybe the best part of this show. Maybe I think he brings a whole different his relationship with Loki and their arc with him and Loki, and I think he makes the performance with Ravona Renslayer better, because their relationship in this series is extremely important to the plot and to the story and to a lot of the emotional weight, where what's the right thing, and what, like, trying to figure out what the morality of what they're doing, what's good about their work, what's bad about their work, and whatnot. So he's a very interesting character to me, and I think we're gonna probably talk about him a lot. What do you think, Jeff? Mobius.
Okay, my favorite character in the show, but I have a few things to bring up about this character that I didn't even realize until I read this. So, an agent of the TVA who specializes in the investigations of particular dangerous time criminals. Heron likened Mobius to like a hard-boiled detective, which when I was watching a lot of the scenes, I really got a lot of Law and Order Criminal Intent vibes from him. But anyway, with Wilson comparing him to the character of Jack Cates in 48 Hours from 1982. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige noted that the character is similar to Owen Wilson himself in that he is unfazed by the MCU, which means he probably never really paid attention. Hiddleston helped Wilson prepare for the role by explaining and showing him moments from the MCU films, which Wilson felt was useful for when Mobius interviews Loki in the series. Speaking of the interviews, Wilson and Heron both examined Good Will Hunting as inspiration for Mobius being a mentor and therapist for Loki, who is looking to push him toward where he needs to get to. And I do feel like Renslayer is kind of like what's the guy, the Eric Selvig in Good Will Hunting? She's kind of like that character in Good Will Hunting. So it's very similar, actually, plot narrative to Good Will Hunting. I never realized that, though. So very interesting. But yes, I love Owen Wilson in this role. He's so good. My favorite character on the show, and there are a lot of really good ones. So,
Jaemeel, anything to add on Mobius?
This is Owen Wilson's best performance in his career.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that the amount of layers to this performance for a person who's primarily a comedic actor, the dramatic intensity in some of these scenes that he has is world class, and I think that people need to recognize and appreciate what we're seeing in front of us. And also, I hope that he kind of continues down this path in terms of what he's shown to be able to do. I cannot wait to see where the character goes next. I can't imagine another performer doing this role and having the same type of impact as Owen Wilson did.
Yeah, sometimes casting, they cast the perfect person, and you don't even realize, like, oh, Owen Wilson playing like this serious like detective guy that's like kind of interrogating Loki and telling him what a bad guy he is, and trying to really get him to turn his morality around and admit who he is and know himself, and just all those we get those same feelings from Good Will Hunting, where it's like it's okay, like he's trying to reach him and and he's doing it sometimes in a very dickheaded way, but it works. Like I don't know, just the performance is fantastic. It's off the charts.
Right. I feel like this whole first episode is quite the ride, because as you're going through it and you're introduced to like a lot of these characters, Owen Wilson being like a face we know, and some of these newer faces in the cast, I'm like, okay, I don't know you as well. I'm not as familiar with you, but I'm kind of just along for the ride. But there's this whole thing where he's showing Loki like, hey, like these are some of your greatest hits. Well, I think there's a bit of an interrogation leading up to that, but it's quite interesting seeing like, Loki have that collar on, him being able to like snap him around the room, and the humbling experience that Loki's having to go through here. And what is Mobius's interest in Loki is the other kind of intriguing thing. Plus, what is this TVA world? Because like Mobius is like, yeah, have a look out there at the window and see that city. And Loki can't really believe it. He's never heard of this place. He's never heard of the timekeepers, doesn't understand it. And Mobius is explaining, yeah, well, you never really needed to before. It's not important. We're at time. Or is Jeff gone away? Jaemeel, along this first episode, and everything's being explained, and you're establishing this place and this world. I was really enjoying it.
Yeah,
I thought.
I love watching pilots. I know that pilots aren't necessarily the end all be all in terms of the quality of a show, how a show will eventually end up. But it's great to see how the creators are presenting ideas to the actual audience. And in this case, you have this episode laying a tremendous amount of groundwork in terms of character development, and also the concept of this entire show, TVA, how time travel is going to be viewed through this lens. All right. And like this is I think this specific episode, in terms of its the amount of heavy lifting it has to do, it is an excellent example of what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is able to produce in terms of a single episode of television.
Jeff, what do you think about this choice to make it like a 1970s sort of office aesthetic? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why do you think they did that? And do you like it? Like,
Okay, two reasons why I think they did it. One reason is I think they liked the motif. I think they liked the way it looked. I think they wanted to use the color orange, especially. And the second reason I think is a real world reason that we haven't found out yet. Maybe the TVA was started in the 70s, and that's why it looks like that. But those are my two theories. I don't know about you guys.
I think what we need to also understand is, if we're watching this show and everything looks futuristic, it doesn't seem like the TVA has been along for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. But with it looking very extremely retro, there is the automatic association to us as an audience that this has been going on for a while.
So it kind of has this dual purpose where it's advanced, but it's not. It's been here for a long time. There's even this line in the first episode. He says time works differently here. Yep. We don't really have a sense of how old they are or how long they've been here.
But isn't it weird, Dave, that Ravona Renslayer was plucked most likely in 2018, and Owen Wilson, Mobius, was mostly likely plucked from 1991. That's basically 92. Like he says the early 90s when he's talking, right? So that's most likely. We don't know yet. It's not confirmed. But we do know about Ravona Renslayer. Why is Ravona Renslayer his superior? That's, because he would have been around.
She's just there. I think maybe just like she's been there a little longer.
But like, right. But has she? How does time work? That's the question here. Is like, if if she's been there longer, that means it's not like a linear timeline. It's like it already is a multiverse of madness, and you know what I mean. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Linear time does not exist, right? In terms of like the characters we are following do follow linear time, but the TVA itself is outside of time,
Right.
in the sense that at this time the multiverse war has already occurred, right? And the end of time, quote unquote, has already progressed to a point. So when you're snipping the different parts of the main timeline, what order are you going? Are you going from earliest to most recent? No, you're just going and you're doing cleanup work. So everything could technically be simultaneously, and not. So it just so happened that she could have been, she is A13, A15,
So
A23.
A23, I think. Yeah.
So she could have been the 23rd agent at the first iteration of
yeah, just because she's from a future point in the timeline from Owen Wilson, it wouldn't matter.
But she was but then I guess so her Nexus event happened before Mobius, most likely.
I guess so, because there's sort of like they explain that within this whole time travel construct, there is still sort of a correlation. That's why when they're at the end of time and the events with Ravona do sync up, like when they have to go to this Renaissance fair, they kind of establish it more in episode 2, where he's like, why don't we just go back to when the variant first showed up? Why are we here like, this amount of time later? And they're like, well, we have to, because we'll create more timelines and whatever. So.
No, that's not what he says. What he says is we have to go in real time. That's the word he uses, in real time. That makes no sense. Like,
because the Nexus event, when they're made aware of it and then they react to it, is the real time.
Real time.
That's the real time.
That's the real time, not like the specific when, because they can't.
Not it being 1985.
You can't go back before the Nexus event, because the Nexus event won't happen in that timeline they go back to before it hahappens.
Right, because you're creating a new timeline if you go back before it.
Right. That's okay. That makes sense. That's what he should have said.
There's so much going on here, but this whole mischievous scamp scene. He sees this whole light. Well, a lot happens here. He sees something like where Owen Wilson's doing this grilling of him, like, why do you hurt people? Do you enjoy it? And he kind of breaks him throughout this. Like Loki eventually gets away. He because he steals the collar controller,
time twister.
The time twister. I love his scene with Casey, where he goes, Casey, I'm good. He goes, first he asks his name. Kate, what's your name? He goes, Casey. He goes, Casey, give me the test record. I'm gonna gut you like a fish. It's like, what the fish?
Like, how do you not know what a fish is? He goes, I never seen one before. What the hell does that matter?
And he's like, death, Casey, painful death.
Yeah.
Violent, painful death. It is a great comedic scene if I've ever seen one between these two. And then it turns so somber when he realizes all those Infinity Stones are in the drawer, and that he's like, we use them as paperweights. So they're cut, they're nothing here. It's
which matters more to the Loki of 2012 than it would have mattered to the Loki that died in Ragnarok or in Infinity War. You know what I mean? Like that Loki was on a quest to, take over Midgard and then take over the 9 realms. That was his whole plan or whatever. And then, you're right, Dave. Mobius breaks him down and gets him to re-spit out the line that he said before, that it's a desperate control for power. It's a desperate
plea for control. A desperate plea for control.
Yeah, because you're weak. It's a way. It's a part of the illusion. He says all these kind of different things, and again, a fantastic therapy type scene. But it's also interrogation. It's great. It's so good.
Did you enjoy when he put B-52 into that looper when he got the collar off, and she was like, stop it.
It's so great, and he just keeps going, and then he's just, and it's so great because eventually B-15 is going to be an ally, so it's kind of funny.
52 is it B-15 or was
B-15?
B-15. Not B-52. That's a band.
Yeah, the B-52s. Yeah. Okay. Also, one other thing I want to mention in this show as a whole, the music. the music is amazing. Like
Yeah.
they have the the Demons by, I think her name's Haruki something. It's a Japanese girl. But that song, like, that starts off the Marvel credits. I think it's in episode 2. Oh my god. Like, so good. Like, I wish they did a song over the Marvel credits every single time. I don't need the Marvel like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I don't need that every, like, they do it almost every, like, they only did it twice, I think, where they put a song over the Marvel
Well, they
credits.
did Hey Mr. Fantasy for Endgame, right? Over the credits or whatever.
They do it for the movies more than they do it for,
They did it for Guardians, didn't they? For one of the Guardians,
Yeah, I agree that the score for this, like the music that they played over the credits, was amazing. I thought that some of that whole scene where he was like, he's looking at that time TVA like display thing, and he's like, is this the greatest power in the universe? Am I like completely screwed over here? And then that whole scene where he's is it the bathroom with Mobius, or it looks like a shower room maybe, and he's holding up the Tesseract. He's like, hey, did you try to use that? He's like, yeah, a bunch of times. He's like, yeah, it doesn't work here.
It's the same room. It's the same room.
It's just maybe the lighting or something's different.
It's the way they're shooting it. He's over to the side and he's sitting on that see that little ledge that's sitting right there, that's right behind them. That's what he's sitting on.
Yeah. So this first episode does a lot to just break Loki. I feel like it's all about break. Okay, remember how this was Avengers 2012 Loki? Well, by the end of this, I don't know, it's maybe not even a day, but his whole world, he's been flipped around quite a bit here. And
I heard a lot of criticism about this, that it's kind of ridiculous that a 6 or 7 year arc that we saw in the movies with this Loki, they try to completely like get him to be redeemed within one episode of television.
Not completely, but they do a lot in this one.
Right. And my argument against that is, if you saw how you die, if you saw that you like you saw this power that the TVA has, if you saw that you indirectly killed your own mother, I think it would have an effect on you.
Well, and I was gonna really talk
that you see that your father actually, considers you a son, and
he saw all this stuff. He saw him and Odin. He saw what happened with his mother. He saw him and his brother sort of reconciled. That he died a hero in essence, right?
Yeah. And his brother cared.
Yeah,
and all these little different things matter.
Like, I don't know what that would do to me, but this I was going to talk about this when we got to like maybe episode 5, or because that's when we meet all the other variants of Loki in the Void. And this whole show, this Loki show, really does have like a Charles Dickens Christmas Carol aspect to it, where Ebenezer Scrooge got to see his unfortunate future and was like, no, I don't want to live like that. And it kind of ties into this cliffhanger here. He's like, yeah, well, the dangerous, crazy variant we're hunting is you.
That's a really interesting idea, Dave. I think that it's a Ghost of Christmas Past, present, and future, because he kind of goes through all three. And like you could almost say Mobius is the ghost of the past, because he's the one going through his old past, and then
or that younger version, that kid version of him too, the one who had killed Thor, is kind of his past in a way. Another version of him,
and then the old guy is his future.
Yep.
Potentially, like, this is who I could become, or what I'll grow to be.
And the alligator is his present. Makes perfect sense.
The alligator is, well, I think he's his present, or maybe also that President Loki as well. So that's where the first episode kind of goes. And then I want to, I know we're 48 minutes into it. Let's get to the second episode, The Variant, which I think is a very good episode too. It's 54 minutes. It's a little bit longer than the 51 minutes for the first episode.
Time doesn't matter.
Time doesn't matter.
They don't stick to a format. They don't
stick to a format.
You feel it with these episodes, and really thank you, HBO and premium television, that goes, we're going to tell a story in this episode, and this is how long the episode needs to be, as long as it takes for us to tell this story. Right. Yep. And people complain, like, oh, the episode's only 30 minutes. This chapter is only 30 minutes.
That's all it needs to be. That's as long as it needs to be. It will be as long as the story demands. And I really respect that. And this second episode, The Variant, is is different than all of the other 5 episodes. I think that's what really does. I think that all 6 are very distinct and have a very different tone to them. But this one maybe is closer to a. Is it a buddy cop or is it more just a mystery story?
It's
or
a buddy cop. It's a
buddy cop story, which I thought that Falcon and the Winter Soldier had the corner on that market, but this is a little bit differently. We see that Loki gets put into his variant consultant outfit. He's got the whole scene where he's talking at the very beginning to Miss Minutes about what's going on. We're getting more TVA exposition and what the hell is going on with everything. But it also starts in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, 1985, at this like Renaissance fair.
I need a hero, Dave.
We need a hero. Yeah, there's like the whole we need a hero. Where, and we find out this will be Sylvie, but Sylvie we don't even find out about any of that until the end of this episode. We had the I Need a Hero by Bonnie Tyler montage. This whole battle in like the tent between, I guess it's the people that Sylvie's enchanted, right? She's enchanted. She
enchants them there, yeah.
Yeah, she enchants them, and she's not really in the fight directly. She's more fighting through the enchanted people.
Yep.
But it's a really fun sequence. Good music choice. It's appropriate for the year they're in as well. And whereas the Loki we know so far, he doesn't enchant people or do as much mind control and whatever else. But this is continuing this thing that this is a bad Loki, a more villainous Loki than versus our protagonist Loki.
Well, that's what the TVA are saying.
Yeah.
We don't really know at this point. Like, is she a villain? We don't know her motives. We have no idea where she comes from, who she is, why she's a Loki. Nothing.
And they refer to the variant as he throughout the whole episode to throw us off, right? So
right. Do they know it's a woman though? Like,
no, they don't. Which is confusing because clearly, like, Renslayer has a history with this variant, so it's weird that she's not on record at all. But I don't know. It seems like a long time since.
Well, they
that happened.
They show they show her go through the metal detector thing. They show like they processed her. They didn't. Yeah. They didn't convict
her. But maybe
her.
it was a stain on the record, so they covered it up.
So, what we've learned, especially at the end of the series, is that there are resets with the TVA, and
right.
So people not remembering is absolutely
plausible.
Plausible.
Yeah.
Now, the thing we also need to realize is that Sylvie has been doing this for a long time. How do we know it's a long time? Just imagine she was a little child when she was originally taken, and she's been on the run. She would technically only age outside of the TVA.
Right.
So in the little moments she has been hiding out is how long she's grown.
Correct. Yes. So, and she ages much slower because she's presumed. We don't know a ton about her, and it's more about this third episode we're going to talk more. We maybe more about Sylvie because that's a lot of her backstory filled in. But that like she's from Asgard, but her relationship with the parents was very different, and whether she had a Thor or not is not even discussed, and how different her timeline is from his timeline is sort of up in the air. But yes, she would presumably be a frost giant too. She would age like she'd be about 5,000 years old, but she's been on the run for 5,000 years.
Only the impression that she's based a frost giant. She could have been
she could be anything
because like Loki is an adopted child.
So. Right. So she's another adoptee, but whether she was adopted from the same place and for the same circumstances is not clear.
Correct.
Right. It's not just that her timeline is like what if Loki was born a woman?
Yeah.
It's
Correct.
More than that.
The emphasis of how she was playing with the Valkyries kind of points me in the direction that maybe she has a connection to them.
And she would be Asgardian by genetic.
They never confirm whether or not she yes, they say her name is like Laffy daughter or whatever in the like on the file, but they never show that she's definitely like they talk about it, but like is she a frost giant?
If she's Laufey daughters, then she would be a frost giant.
You would think so, but like she's also like seems to have a big connection to the Valkyries. And she also asked, like, we're not there yet, but she asked Renslayer directly, like, what was my Nexus event? And as far as I can tell, it was that fact that she wanted to save Asgard. You know, because
Yeah.
when she's playing with her toys and they come and take her, she's talking about saving Asgard from a big threat, kind of like Hela, you know, kind of like what the Valkyrie were trying to do. And maybe she did save Asgard.
Or
Maybe
she
she,
was going to. Yeah,
yes, and
Yeah.
that was her Nexus.
maybe.
Maybe when Loki was a child, the Loki we know, he's always dreamed about ruling, right? And then you have the variance in terms of their attitude, because
Right.
it isn't just the fact that she's a daughter, that she's a girl, that is her Nexus event. As we later learn with classic Loki, he was able to live for how long separate from everything, and it was only when he decided to come back, when a decision is made, is when the TVA stepped in.
Mhm.
Right. Because he wasn't, in fact, it wasn't creating a Nexus event. And the whole thing about the second episode really does a lot to try to explain Nexus events to us and what they are and what the TVA is about. And because it's kind of thrown over. They talk about, it's when somebody does something that unexpected. Maybe they were late to work that day. I don't really get that because to me, it would have to have some kind of time travel involved. But to me, it's also this idea that time is sort of predetermined and therefore
Right. But it's not.
so
It's
but
not
is
predetermined.
but there's choice, so choices still exists.
Yeah, choice.
We learned in the last episode that he who remains, Kang the Conqueror, whatever you want to call him, basically has made this sacred timeline the way he wants it, so he could protect everything. You know, his version of time is just what he thinks is the best for preventing his variants from taking over. That's basically what's going on here.
Yeah.
So the Nexus event is just arbitrary. It's basically whatever Kang decides. No, I'm going to step in. I'm going to intervene it here. The TVA is efficient. I need them to do this.
All decisions that possibly can lead away from him being in the position that he is eliminated.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. You know, and it's not like there is free will. That's, you know, but the thing is, Kang is removing everyone's free will with the TVA.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's going on.
He's saying that this is the version of history, but it's also within the multiverse because the TVA seems to do more than just like the one universe. They seem to regulate all the multiverses.
Right. Well, they can only because they can only regulate the sacred timeline. Once it goes past that red line, Dave, they can't. They're done. So, but that to me, that suggests there are many timelines that are beyond the red line that are going on. Maybe Sylvie was from one of those timelines right before it hit the red line, and now that timeline is still going on. You know what I mean? But just without Sylvie in it.
What? No,
you
they
know?
pruned it.
They can prune it. Oh yeah, so they pruned that one. But did they prune Asgard? Did they prune the whole timeline? Does it blow up the whole timeline that's going on all throughout the whole world, the whole universe?
They pruned the difference. So so Sylvie being eliminated, and then that aspect being pruned means everything else is still going on.
Right. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Right. So this goes back to Avengers Endgame, right? Why doesn't Loki being taken away from the timeline affect everything else afterwards, right? So because it gets pruned right after, right?
Yeah, they reset the timeline. So
in
it didn't create it.
Yeah, well, in Mongolia. So that reset the whole timeline for all of Endgame.
It eliminated the difference.
It eliminated the fact
because remember they did steal two other time Infinity Stones from that exact time, right? There was also the Time Stone
but they returned them.
They returned them. Yes.
Loki was never going to be returned. He left. You know, that's the thing. You know, and that's why they said the Avengers thing had to happen or was supposed to happen, because Captain America returned the stones to their exact time. But Loki was never going to go right back.
Unless that divergent timeline was just erased and it's just done.
Maybe. Yeah. And that could, they don't really explain that whole pruning thing when they do the release charges, because like, does everything from that world go to the crazy Alioth planet? Is that what happens?
We have to believe that the charge has a very big range, because otherwise, how can you transport an entire building like
Mhm.
Avengers Tower or a King Tower.
Or a
Or
boat.
like a cruise ship or whatever it was,
Yeah.
or a military ship.
Yeah.
Also, I just wrote down here in my notes that there was quite a bit of stuff here in this episode with, I guess it was Mobius and Renslayer, with more scenes like, can you trust this variant?
Mhm.
Why are you doing this? I have to keep. She's got to deal with the timekeepers. She doesn't like that Mobius doesn't use coasters and leaves little marks on her wooden furniture.
This version of Mobius, or maybe it's the same Mobius and he just doesn't remember
Because of the reset.
Right.
because of the resets.
I also wrote down here too can Loki okay, so to me, like, if you want to talk about what the overarching theme of WandaVision was, it was like grief.
Yeah.
Right. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I guess I
think it had a lot to do with a lot of things, but it was kind of like it was about race a little bit, but it was also about symbols and living up to somebody else's expectation. There was a bunch of different things going on in that show, and so
not as clean or boiled down to one word, but
how powerful is a symbol? What happens if a symbol is corrupted, or the idea of it, can it be overcome? Are ideals more important than policy? And there's a wide variety of things that were covered in Falcon and Winter Soldier. I felt that they might have tried to tackle too much or needed more runway to be able to clearly state their premises. This one seems more focused and more intertwined with each other than
those. But I also was coming into this like thinking, like, this is on my rewatch today. I was like, okay, is Loki as a show about maybe identity? Is it about redemption? Is it about choice, free will? Maybe all of the above. Yeah, and I wrote down a couple other ideas on that too, but it was
I think it's like about like mainly predeterminism and whether or not like
fate.
Yeah, like, is your life going to go away no matter what, or do you have the choice to change it? And that's kind of like the general,
but also faith, right? Because this whole thing with Renslayer and Mobius is a lot about like this whole thing about for all time, always, which is this
sounds like a prayer.
It sounds like a prayer because they also it's like may the force be with you and also with you and those kinds of sayings.
Live long and prosper.
Yep.
Live long and prosper. And for all time, always. Even in this scene here with the coasters, as they're looking around the room of the trophies of Renslayer that she has on display from the different variants they've taken in over the years.
Okay, question. They remember most of those things. At least she does. He doesn't remember everything. He even says to her at one point, "I don't remember you getting that. Where did you get that?" And he goes, "Oh," she goes, "My other agent." And she goes, "Who's your other agent?" It's probably him, But like, these are the things that you were right. Why does Renslayer not remember? Like, she remembers that, but she doesn't remember other
She's
things.
also a liar, so we have to remember that too.
But she's a big liar.
That's true. Keep in mind that if we're under the impression that there's resets and people change roles, right? She didn't change her role,
right?
But neither did Mobius at B-15, but they still don't remember. So she, because of her connection or let's say her position, maybe she survives resets in her current incarnation.
Right.
And investigators and hunters don't have that same luxury.
Yeah, she's holding on to more information and memory.
But she doesn't have all of the information because Miss Minutes also provides her that. Maybe the fact that she remembers is via Miss Minutes provides her that information. So when a reset occurs, she's updated in what she needs to know. And we have this a broken telephone or a degradation of information. So that's why the variant turns from a she to a he, right? Because how Miss Minutes is providing the information.
Perhaps. Okay, let's come back to that. Okay, so this whole thing where the Loki variant, he's working with them. The whole scene where he goes to that librarian or whatever in the TVA, he's like, "Can I have like the files on the end of time?" "No, classified." "Can I have the beginning of time?" "No, classified." He's like, "What can I have?" And then she goes, "Ugh." And she gives him the thing, and she goes, happy reading. And so he has to like do detective work, right, in this story, and he starts figuring out that these apocalypse events don't have as high of a thing, and he's cross-referencing that,
Right.
and then he does the whole scene where he says that that Ragnarok is the juice and his salad is like Asgard, and the salt is the Hulk, I think, at one point in this metaphor, but he ends up pouring juice all over Mobius's salad. And your
buddy Casey's right over at the other table kind of watching.
Well, he was told Casey's juice, if we want to get into it. Yeah, so but that's I thought that was a really funny scene. There was not much to it, but then it goes to this whole thing. Okay, we're going to go to Pompeii, and even they're like, yeah, it's kind of cool that we're here for the Pompeii disaster, but maybe we should be really quiet. And so Mobius is going very cautiously, where then Loki just goes on this whole thing where he starts smashing things, breaking things, starts speaking in like ancient Latin to the people of Pompeii. You're all about to die, and I'm from the future. And he's like, see, nothing matters.
And he also releases a bunch of goats, which is kind of like his spirit animal.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't pick up on that. Did you guys like, I thought that this was just like, okay, like, all right, I get it. Like, so like, you know, it's fun to see your characters like solve problems like this sometimes, like that, like the procedural cop shows, or even shows like House or whatever.
Well, it follows the same type of narrative of those type of shows, especially when you get these two different opposing forces together. There is the the revelation that this partnership is valid. The suiting up scene where you're once again 48 hours comes into play. It's like you're just a crook on a weekend pass. They give him a jacket that says Variant on it, right?
Yeah,
clearly indicating to like him and everyone that he's still not one of them,
that he's
right?
a cosmic mistake, another kind of religious overtone, like that he's an abomination.
Yeah, not supposed to exist.
And then you have at the end of the episode the confusion or the possibility of a betrayal, right? But one partner still believing that no, this person is still with me. Mobius still believes that Loki is still with him regardless of their separation.
Yeah, when he leaves through the portal with Sylvie or whatever.
Yeah, well, and there's a couple lines he gives leading up to that, where after they kind of talk about the apocalypse things and everything there, he goes, no one who's bad is ever truly bad, and no one who's good is ever truly good. And
so true.
You know, and so then Mobius and Loki, they continue like this partnership, like they're working together. And he's like, yeah, I found this clue, which we didn't really talk about from the first episode, but this kablooey gum, right? This like gum that was that he had found in one of the France scenes where she had murdered a bunch of the TV agents. And he goes, well, they only made this from 2047 to 2151. So it has to be within that like 150 years. Or,
no. 4 years.
104 years. Right?
No, 4 years,
4
Dave.
years.
2047 to 2051, that gum was
made.
Oh,
2051, not 2151?
No, 2047 to 2051.
Okay, so they made it for 4 years, this gum?
Yeah, and when they go to Alabama, where there's the hurricane and the big rocks car thing or whatever, that's in 2050. Yeah. So that's, so
Alabama, 2050.
Right.
And so yeah, there's this whole thing where Owen Wilson has to go to bat with Renslayer again for the Loki variant. He's like, come on, we're working together. He's helping us out. This will come back to bite Mobius later on when Loki does bail at the end of this episode. But and the whole thing in the mall, right? Because it's like this mall, I guess, where these people in 2050 are trying to avoid a hurricane, but they're all going to die. So this is where they figure that the variant is hiding. Turns out that's correct. And for a while it's Loki and B5015, but because she's like, no, Mobius, you can't keep an eye on him. I have to. And then while Loki and her together, they run into a guy who's buying azaleas because they're in season in a hurricane that he's about to die in. But then it turns out it's not, because that guy gets enchanted, from the enchantment passes into B15, and so for a while that's the Loki variant, who we'll come to know as Sylvie. Did you guys like this whole thing where it was passing from like one person to the next throughout this? I think it was Randy for a bit, and then it was like this kind of redneck guy at the end who was beating the crap out of him.
Okay, no, I didn't love it because here's why. They build up this character, and then the first real, introduction to the character is through three people that she is not. I don't know. I don't love it. Like that. I don't love that part. Like I don't love the introduction to the character coming through other people. That's just me though. I can understand other people liking it, but
My I have to agree. The reason why is we already have throughout this series instances of this person is not this person. It's actually dot dot dot. So to kind of have this play out and then have it played again, albeit much better later on, it cheapens this moment. So like, was it really necessary? It would make more sense if they could have just had one person, really.
yeah, or
Or
none.
just have B. No, just literally have B.
Well,
B-15.
It's also showing off this power set, right? That she has.
Yeah, but I think B-15.
I think see it like this again.
Yeah.
Do we see her chant multiple people in a chain? We never see it happen again. So we're presented this power that is never used again and never referenced again. Why didn't she when she's out of time, when she's in regular timeline, why does she not enchant any of the other hunters?
Like when they're on Lamentus, why isn't she just enchanting everybody?
Right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
I don't know.
the Nexus event, and she only does it once when she could be doing it a lot more.
Right? Yeah, they introduced her as very powerful enchantress, and because she's kind of based off Enchantress and Lady Loki, but she's a different person. So there's a bunch of different things going on with her. But at the same time, yeah, I don't like the fact that in this episode 2, when we really get to hear from her, Sylvia DiMartino, is this isn't about you, and then it's just like I just don't like the way they introduced her. But I like everything else after. I just don't like the way it happens.
Yeah, they could have removed that line and just had her go into the portal.
Yeah, that would have been better. I don't like the "this isn't about you" moment. Like that part, I didn't like.
Did you like when he said that? Because he Loki, the guy Loki, he's saying, "I need a qualified lieutenant." Did you guys enjoy that?
Yes, that was good. Like, yeah,
but he's trying to work with her. At this point, he thinks it's just another version of him. Yeah. So he doesn't know it's a woman yet. He's like, let's work together and we're going to take down these Time Lords, because Loki knows he's only on borrowed time because he's going to be pruned eventually. So he knows he can't go back to his life. So he's just trying to like stall for time. So he's like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to work with you. Maybe I'm going to work with Mobius. I don't know. I'm just trying to I'm making it up as I go along. Kind of like WandaVision.
Yep. Yeah, he's keeping all his options open, and he doesn't really know which path he wants to take yet.
I got another important question about this whole mall scene. Why has style and fashion not changed in 30 years?
I mean,
maybe it has, and now it's gone back.
It's gone back. It's retro.
It's 30 years.
30.
Do we not see what people are wearing now?
I was just watching that new movie with Amanda just before this called The Tomorrow War, and
I've seen it.
You saw it, and it takes place in 2051. So in 30 years, like the world's gonna go to shit. According to
that movie, yes, but that was because there's aliens trapped and whatever. Yeah, so I just wrote that, and then we finally meet Sylvie in person. What am I doing? I don't need to turn off my video. So maybe we can just quickly touch on to her character, because it's very end here of episode 2, more or less, that she shows up.
Okay, I want to get some little quotes from the directors and stuff here. Okay, so DiMartino said Hiddleston had looked after her and gave her advice on playing the character while she did her own research and preparation for the role. DiMartino kept her regional accent for Sylvie, which I thought bad choice, but anyway, in order to not sound too posh or too well spoken to help reflect the life Sylvie had lived. Hiddleston felt DiMartino incorporated certain characteristics he uses for Loki to portray Sylvie while still making the character completely her own. Heron believed that Sylvie dealing with her pain put her in a similar headspace as Loki was in the original Thor movie. DiMartino looked to the fight scenes of Atomic Blonde to create Sylvie's fighting style, calling her a street fighter with more of a brawler fighting stance compared to Loki's balletic style. Yeah, so that's kind of like the breakdown on her.
Yeah, like I was not super keen on her character to start, but she really grew on me as this show went on.
Yep, I really liked her character. I wasn't crazy about like her accent. Like I don't she's so different from Loki. Like as far as the way she speaks, like even in this episode, like the Variant episode, when he kind of knocks her down, he's like, I wouldn't treat me like this. Like there's a bunch of different things to, yes, I get they're trying to differentiate the characters, but they're the same person,
But they're not.
But they are sort of
the same, but different.
They're same,
but different.
But the same.
But the same, yeah. It's kind of like, what is it, right? Because is she more like Loki than Richard E. Grant or less? Like, I don't get it. Like,
right. Well, her life is very different than the Tom Hiddleston's Loki. She was taken as a child. I just don't understand why her accent is different. Like, what I get, like she had different.
Depends on where she was during all this time, and we haven't really.
That's true. Like, what if she hunkered down in Sylvia DiMartino's real hometown in England during an apocalyptic event, and that's what she has that accent? That would make sense, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's maybe what am I doing here? Let's maybe move on to episode 3, because the very end of episode 2 is that she walks through the portal. She's starting to blow up all those little charges she's been stealing and whatever. She's planning to like assault the TVA. Like
that's time bombing them.
And that's what she's been attacking crews, stealing the purple stuff that the charges they set off. And that leads directly into our 3rd episode where she walks through the portal and because at the end of the second episode, like Mobius is saying, Loki, stop, don't follow her, right? Because they're picking up the pieces and he walks through anyway, which really pisses off Mobius, which will come up in episode 4. But first, we have to go to maybe episode 3, which is, it's called Lamentus, and they do eventually end up on Lamentus. However, that's not right away. We see through. Yeah. Okay. So the cold open in this. So for maybe this is not the right picture to have up here, but to start the episode Lamentus, we had a cold open with Sylvie. She's mind controlling Hunter C-30, right? And like these scenes. So this is maybe one of the more like longer scenes we've had with this actor who's playing Sylvie. What's her name? De Laurentiis? Sylvie? Where's?
No, her name is her real name.
Sophia
DiMartino.
Sophia DiMartino. Yes. And just like she's trying to find out where the timekeepers are at. She's basically using this like mind control, this enchantment as sort of an interrogation thing. And I guess it's to me, it was establishing more of this Sylvie as a villain at this point, because I didn't fully understand the context. It seemed like she was torturing C-30.
Not really.
No, she was getting C-30 to remember a memory so she could implant herself in that memory to kind of interrogate her. That's kind of what was going on.
Find out what she knew.
Yeah, and but I mentioned it before, but the song that leads in to that moment is so fantastic. It's Haley Kiyoko. It's a song called Demons. It's like, I got demons in my head. So it's like the whole idea. They do it a lot in the show, like the idea of demons in this episode,
and the idea of a devil too, because they talk about that Loki is kind of like the Norse devil, right? Yep. Like he's even when Mobius in episode 1 asked that French girl in the church, like, who did this? And she points up at the devil's stained glass.
Right, which was a huge Mephisto red herring. But,
I love it.
I love it. I think they did that on purpose just to screw with people.
Yeah.
Right. So Sylvie's going through her thing, and she's marching up to the TVA like thing, and she's got to take on the timekeepers. And Loki, having followed her and being somewhat genuinely trying to help this situation, or not help her at this point. He's not in league with her. He's like, no, stop her. And he actually gets into a fight with her, and this culminates with them somehow. The Tempad gets them to another apocalypse event, which is Lamentus 1, which is in 2077, which is where they end up, which is maybe I'll bring this photo back now, because that's how they end up here. And this is where they spend most of this episode. And I like these, like, just gotta say, like, the visual effects in this episode, the whole look of Lamentus, incredible. Like just
it's the year 2077 too, which is interesting.
random. Yeah. Like they picked this, but sure. Okay. Some alien planet on 2077. Sure. That got blew up into another planet. And just from an alien world look, like how different it felt and the aesthetic of it. And basically this is a love story, this episode. It's all about
I don't know if it's a love story. I think it's trying to love yourself.
Yeah, it's a bottle episode though. It's like the Breakfast Club, more or less, where these people are put into this position, and you have this pending deadline, like the essay in Breakfast Club.
Yep,
and
it's a romantic comedy.
You're trying to put romance on it. I don't think this is the romance. This is the people learning to love each other, in even if it's just a friendship, a friendship type of love.
Is this about learning to love yourself too, though?
That's how I take it.
You're really trying to get in there with that. Like, you're seeing each other in the other person at the same time. Right. So that's why at the end, when yes, Loki is at fault, but Sophie is also at fault, and Sophie recognizes that aspect, that hopelessness, and it's like, well, I can't be mad at myself, right? And then
interesting,
Loki's also saying, like, I was wrong, and I need to, like, she needs to learn how to forgive herself, and he needs to apologize, needs to humble himself and understand that he was wrong.
Well,
right?
this whole
when they come to that convergence, that's at the end.
This whole episode's kind of like Sylvie's really pissed off at Loki for ruining her plan that was years in the making, as she says. Now, how many years was she going around and mopping up, TV agents at Oshkosh festivals to get enough charges to time bomb them? And then when she does get this plan, she kind of like she had multiple opportunities to be like, hey, come onto my team. This is what I'm trying to do. But instead, she treats Loki as an adversary almost. And so, like, that's for me is like why her plan failed. If she had just said, hey, like, she didn't trust him. And I understand why. She has trust issues.
She can't trust. Like,
she can't trust.
Kane told us at the end.
That's right. And so it is consistent to her character. I'm not knocking it. But if she had just done that, I think it would have really helped her out. They would have been able to get to the end of episode 4 a lot faster.
Right. This I like just everything that they had on the train. I thought was particularly important and special in this episode, because it just showed them trying to like use their powers, trying to navigate this thing. The fact that she hates him so much to start, and that he's not too fond of her, but they're trying to figure out how to get off this planet that they know is going to blow up, because she says this is the worst apocalypse you could have brought us to. There's like, we don't have a hope here.
Do we know? We don't know how many. This is possibly not the first Loki that she's bumped into.
Possibly not.
That's right. Yeah. She's been hopping around the timeline for a while.
So let that can lead us to believe that she's seen what the other variations of her are, and she's grown to hate that, right? She's grown to hate that aspect of her.
Right.
That aspect of her led her to where she's at.
Which that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So
and Loki and Guy Loki's problem
personification of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if she had bumped into boastful Loki, I don't think that would have went too well for her. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
This everything here on the train where, like maybe not this particular thing getting onto it, but when he's like, I can't go backwards on a train is one thing he says here.
And she says, I can't sit with my back to a door, which is a reference to what we find on the next episode when the TVA comes and takes her. Her back is to the door that comes, when they come.
Oh, okay. Good observation there. And they kind of like in this booth here, they kind of like trade stories, and they kind of compare their powers quite a bit. Like what's different, and also their histories. Like, do you remember your mother? Where'd you learn how to do that? And Loki, this has made a lot of headlines. Was that Loki talks about? Yeah, I dated princesses and princes, and he kind of admits he's bisexual, which but
He's fluid.
Yeah.
Fluid, yeah. Which got a lot of notoriety in the interwebs, I believe.
To people who don't read comics, the man has slept with the horse. So like,
yeah, exactly. Like, he's not discriminating against anybody.
Yeah.
He's like what's the guy in Game of Thrones? The Red Viper. He's taking all comers.
Yeah.
Right. I believe that that Sylvie calls love mischief, though. Love is mischief.
Yeah. Love is like a dagger.
Love is like a dagger.
Yep.
A couple of things here. And then I just wrote down here, do the size of the horns matter? Because I guess I was looking at Sylvie's little tiara with the one broken off horn.
Right. Which is a reference. It's a reference to Lady Loki.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
That's really all it is.
Okay.
Or if
I
we're
wasn't
symbolically trying to look at it, seeing that she isn't fully a Loki. And
she's half Loki because she changed her name.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things like maybe also she's been around for a while. Maybe something sliced that off at some weird timeline or something. You know,
she's such a wide variant of the Loki character, right? That she still has one foot in that world, but still is
very different than
she
the rest
is
of them.
The variant. Right.
She's the most varied variant, almost in some ways. And yeah, like I just like we when Loki could make the conjure like the fireworks, and I thought this was really like some interesting, good acting, good scenes here. She falls asleep, and then he wakes up that he's like doing like a drinking song, and he's like the life of the party. He starts singing one point in Asgardian. Like it said this in the closed captions as I was watching, like in Asgardian. This is not real. He's not.
But the song they're singing, Dave, is it's called like a lament, and it's basically what you sing before you die. So
okay, gotcha. It was I wasn't quite sure what it was.
He does a lament on Lamentis.
Yeah.
On Lamentis. He also talks about how it all the food and whatever pairs nice with a figgy port. It's one of my favorite. He's like, it pairs well with a figgy port.
Yeah.
Those guys show up looking for their tickets, and then they get into a fight, and then they end up getting thrown out of the train.
First of all, one other thing, one other reference I want to make to this train before we pass it: Snowpiercer. It's totally a Snowpiercer type reference, because there's even a woman that screams in the crowd before they board the train, like they're only letting the wealthy board the train. So like it's the same idea concept. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, they all died anyway, so it seemed like it didn't matter. But there's the whole fight. Loki ends up destroying the tempad that he was kind of like hiding from her throughout most of this, because when they got to throw on the train and she goes, give it to me, because she jumps out the window to follow him, and it's all like destroyed and fried up from that. He goes, well, she's like, why were you partying it up? He's like, I'm hedonistic.
Yeah, she's like, I'm hedonistic.
I'm more hedonistic than you.
Yeah, but she's like, I focus on the mission. And she's all right. I'm like, you're not more hedonistic. You've been focusing on the mission since you were like 5 years old. You had to have been.
Yeah.
Right. Because you see how like Loki is a lot like Thor in these scenes where he's like breaking glasses and having drinks.
Bring
and
me another.
Bring me another.
Yeah. Which is a great reference to the original Thor. Yeah.
And then Sylvie has her little hissy fit where she like screams really loud and she goes, ah. And then after a beat, Loki's like, oh, did that make you feel better? Did the scream make you feel better?
Very similar to Wanda. Very similar, like that vibration when you get angry, very similar moment.
Yeah. And then after a beat, they say, okay, there's some kind of ship that's leaving. We're going to hide, because she's like, well, yeah, this ark, it gets destroyed. It doesn't make it off the planet. He's like, well, but we're here now. So we're going to steal it and we're going to get the hell out of here. And she's like, well, I don't got a better plan.
They were going to use the ship's energy to power the temp pad. Right. Instead, they're like, we're gonna make sure the ship leaves.
They wanted to create a Nexus event so they could get caught by the TVA. That was their plan.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Because they knew that's the only way to get out of there, and there's no other way to create the Nexus event. I just also wrote here that like the cinematography again, visual effects, just this whole this whole look to the world that they gave it. And then she also explains to Loki at this point that all of those TVA workers are not created by the timekeepers. They are actually just variants. And this is so like Loki's learning more and more that this TVA is not on the up and up, that there's more to it than even they seem to know. Because
So
he's like,
she would have like, let's say, had an agent. Well, I guess through enchanting, she realized that they're variants and they lived a life. And now
Yeah,
they
but
no longer have those memories.
I feel like Sylvie should know way more than she does about the TVA. Don't you guys feel that way? Like she's been hopping around the timeline, hiding from them since she was a little girl. She's clearly in like her late 20s, early 30s by this point, right?
if not hundreds of years old. We
If
wouldn't,
not-
we wouldn't be able to tell the difference if she was.
Right. So I feel like unless she was really just hiding and keeping on the down low that entire time until she could formulate this plan that we are now watching of getting all these reset devices, like I feel like she should know more about the time, but she doesn't.
At the same time, she stole that first power. I totally forgot the name of it.
The time pad?
The time pad.
Yeah.
That time pad didn't last up until just now. So she's had various time pads.
Right.
So, like, she's constantly in confrontation with the TVA from a very young age. So unless she had help, that doesn't really seem likely.
No, she must have had help. It's the only way. Like, but maybe we'll see that in season 2.
Maybe we'll get more of her backstory filled in because there's still a lot of questions. Clearly, what did you guys think of this whole scene where they were like trying to storm the Ark and they were it was almost a fight for one part of it and they were battling through?
One continuous scene.
Yeah, I remember Amanda and I were watching it, and it got to the end of the episode, and like you guys were talking about, like tell a story, doesn't matter how long time, but like when that episode ended, we were like, oh, short. How long is that episode, Dave?
Lamentis is only
35.
Yeah, it's much shorter. It's like 30 something minutes.
Yeah, like we're like, that's the episode. Like the rest of them were like 50 some minutes, and we're so it's a drastic change.
Well,
I kind of understood why, like, because you feel like there was part of the next episode could have fit into this episode easily, but it was, I think that they wanted to end it here, like that's this ending of hope, right? Because we end with this song that's sung over the credits because they see the Ark destroyed, and it's not just Loki and Sylvie who sort of like react to it. It's like everybody there. They all realize that it's
you're talking about the Brenda Lee's song.
No, this is Dark Moon Rising, I think it's called.
Oh, is that the song that plays at the end of Lamentis? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But okay, so it's the next episode. We'll talk about it when we get to it.
But questioning that was like all that action and then like sort of that like abrupt somber cold like end that caps off this Lamentis episode. How do you feel about it?
It's the breather. It's the like, you're racing against time, and then you're like, God. Right? That exhale, that the hope has drained out of their body, and it's like that's what the feeling that they're trying to
like kind of like you have at the end of Endgame, or sorry, Infinity War, right? After the snap and all that, right?
Yeah, like what's gonna happen? Like obviously they're not gonna die, but like we have to figure. Like,
well, all those other people around them are though. It's also their reaction too.
Yeah. I love it. It's just basically they see it and they go, all right, let's go have a drink. Basically they walk away.
All right, let's talk about the next episode, which is called the Nexus event. And so this one is more, I guess, what I maybe call the Rebellion episode, or something along that, but it kind of picks up right where we left off.
For me, this is the best episode of the 6. But
this is 48 minutes long, so this one's a bit more. This one is a little bit longer, and there's a lot of like figuring out the conspiracy and all those kinds of things. I don't have a ton of photos from this episode. I do have a few, but let's maybe get into that. So we have Renslayer she's talking to the timekeepers for the cold open, or like she's going in to meet with them. So like we only saw the cartoon illustrations that Miss Minutes was telling us about them before. Now we're seeing them like, okay, there's a room that
and the statues.
And the statues. We've seen the statues around too, yes. We know that there's a bit of a conspiracy going on here. Oh no, but I'm sorry, I skipped over the whole beginning scene, which was the Sylvie flashback. That's what starts this whole episode. We get the Sylvie as the girl, as the young girl playing her, who I thought was very strong in her scenes.
She also played young Ray, Dave. Not good.
Young Ray?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Ray from
Star Wars?
Yeah. Same girl.
I also love how you said Star Wars.
Yeah.
Right.
But here the whole scene, and we see the younger Renslayer as A23, as mentioned, who captures the young Sylvie, who you know.
Question. See how her hair is super dark?
Yeah.
Is Sylvie dyeing her hair? When is she having time to do this?
I don't know if that's the question I need to ask, but it's
what? It's not, I mean, I have questions. Is she going to a hair salon at a different time?
She's in movies and TV shows. So
maybe she's able to change her aesthetic.
Right. She's Loki, and they can do that kind of shit.
Why she's blonde in the future? Here she's got dark hair.
Why not cast a blonde girl? Is all I'm saying.
They liked her better.
We saw the Star Wars performance, and they're like,
yes, we need that.
Yeah, off the back of that Star Wars thing. Yeah. So after you watching this whole backstory here with Sylvie, you have to be thinking like the TVA is kind of not good. Like that her rage and her need for vengeance is understandable to a degree, and not even if you don't agree with her methods or that her need for vengeance, you can see that why she sort of has been turned into what she is, like a murderer and a hypocrite and the other things that Kang points out to her when he meets her, and can't get over her little thing. But this was a traumatic experience, and that's what this whole backstory does a lot to establish. It also establishes the Renslayer to her connection as well.
Another thing, like Sylvie can kind of shove it right back in Kang's face because she might have been a murderer regardless, but we'll never know because Kang was the one that put her on this path, and of course that's what she's gonna do. Like, you know, like of course she's going to rebel. She's chaotic.
So he's complicit in her creation. As well.
Yeah. So like, you know, he can say that all
he created her Nexus event.
Yeah,
we don't know what her reality would have been like or her ending result as a character. He plucked her out. He diverged her life, right? So that was her Nexus event that led her to the current situation.
Like the thing is that we're gonna get to it, but in the last episode, like when she kills him, like I'm like, it makes sense, you know, like, and I'm, you know, like it makes sense. So I don't hate it, you know.
But you also feel sad for her too at the same time because the next version that she will meet, it's like she can never be satiated in terms of her vengeance because there's always going to be another version of who was responsible for her life that exists, right? So if there was ever like we're not informed if there's ever a situation where Kang does not exist or a version of that.
No, we don't know.
So therefore, she technically could have a situation where she never gets proper vengeance, a completed vengeance.
Right.
Perhaps. Okay. Yeah. Then we go back to, there's a whole conspiracy with C20 because she was the one that had been enchanted by the older Sylvie or the grown-up Sylvie, and that no one's seen her. That she seemed to be okay when she came back, but we saw in the second episode, which we kind of skipped over, which she was like, she kept repeating like it's all real, and get into this whole thing that they are variants and that they have real lives before this, or they have memories leading up to the point that they diverged from their particular timelines. So that's set up. But Loki and Sylvie on Lamentis, this is what creates this other Nexus moment, this whole like romance that they have on the world that is enough to break time. What did you guys think of that? Like everything with Loki and Sylvie. and
we
and their
'cause-
romance.
Is it their love? Like what caused this crazy spike to go right toward that red line so they would have to stop that? Like what was it? Love? Was it Kang? Was it a self they're the thing with a Loki for me is like they're a chaotic element that is necessary for other people. They say it multiple times in the show, but they're necessary for other people to be their best selves, right?
Right.
And when these variant moments happen and the crazy multiverse, I think all that goes out the window. And now Lokis are different. They're chaotic. Instead of being chaotic agents for the timeline, they're chaotic agents against the timeline, against the TVA. And instead of making our heroes the best versions of themselves, they become the best versions of their selves because they're not the villain anymore. They're the hero.
True. Well, like, this whole speech that Loki's giving her, like, are all us Lokis destined to lose? And she
Right.
goes, or
We're
she asked that, and maybe she asked that, and he goes, maybe, but we're always meant to survive.
Right.
And they're making googly eyes at each other as this planet is coming around. Again, the visual effects very much as the first episode, but it's this whole like apocalypse and everything. The space of it all, amazing. But then we saw the doors open up just as they're about to be destroyed, and they get rescued by the TVA, but they're immediately like in custody. And so yes, they're alive, but things are not looking too good for them. And they're split up. And Mobius and he gets to interrogate Loki throughout this next part. And they're a little bit bitter with each other. Mobius is like, you betrayed me, you didn't listen to me, and they end up putting Loki into the time loop with Lady Sif, who makes an appearance in this episode, who I don't think we've seen since like Thor 2.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh well, yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't count, sort of, though.
So it kind of counts, but sort of not really. Is that
sort of Kevin Feige says it doesn't count, so I say it doesn't count.
But Nick Fury's in it.
It doesn't matter.
After this series, it counts.
After this, it counts again.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lady Sif.
At this point, you technically have everything on the table as being valid.
Well, so Coulson's not dead, so Loki is redeemed.
Or he could be a multiverse version of Coulson, or
See, you're getting confused by it. Just because Coulson's alive doesn't mean that this Loki is redeemed.
Okay.
Because his Coulson died.
But he's not. He's only an attempted murderer, not a full murderer.
Right.
That other Loki that's in that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. timeline, he's only attempted murderer.
It's a
Loki.
it's a good point. The Loki that we have in this show literally just stabbed Phil Coulson through the back like a day ago.
Yeah. Well, they referenced that in the first episode.
I know.
Yeah, it was not that long ago for him, though. No.
Well, like I know that the reason why, Jeff, you said that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist, right? Yeah. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when Kevin Feige was asked those questions, the answer was always no. That that does not belong on this reality, this timeline, right? It doesn't exist, right? That conversation that they had in terms of just recently about how timelines and multiverse works, I think that's him going, okay, now everything that happened previously is on the table for this time period, right? And I think that's the conversation. He doesn't want to confuse it. Like if he said maybe, people would, be jumping to conclusions and would not take what happens as like as a revelation, as opposed to like, oh yeah, it's just supposed to happen this way, right? Yep. So this is our main timeline, and now everything is branched out. So these are the branches, as opposed to like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is valid. No, it's a branch timeline, so we can pluck elements from it going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you want to look at that show as a branch timeline, perfect. I mean, it works now perfectly, like you said. But
if you were stuck in a time loop of getting kicked in the balls by, or so, what would your version of that be?
Like
having to sit through Rise of Skywalker.
going to a Polish mass.
Yeah, for forever. You just be the Polish mass.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, I thought this was another sadistic torture of the TVA, where they can put you into a time loop of an unpleasant memory. I get like it's unpleasant. It's also he's getting kicked in the nuts.
It's not even just being the kicked in the nuts. It's the never ending put down. No matter what you do, always looked upon as, and it, like what she says hurts him. It isn't just like the physical pain; it's also the emotional pain, just repeated over and over again. Right.
Well, he said he had a glass of wine and a bath, and he forgot all about it. But this the same like that was true.
Yeah, correct. It's always nagging in his head.
Okay. This whole moment too, like where he cut off her hair, and this is all from Norse mythology, and this is also from the comics, but they never showed it in the first movie of Thor. But this occurred before the first Thor movie, as far as I understand, and so like we never actually got to see this moment on camera in a movie, but it's kind of cool that they did this, like because it did happen.
Well, I think bringing her in for the show was fun.
I think it's just her reintroduction. She's gonna be in Love and Thunder. So
well, and Lady Sif was in the comics is Lady Loki. Like it's Loki, in her body or whatever, right? So like there's a bunch of nice references. Like they should incorporate her.
Could Sylvie be Lady Sif, but adopted by
maybe
by Odin,
or maybe originally adopted by Laufeyson and then adopted by Odin, or something like that.
Yeah, some variation of it.
Yeah,
because that would explain the darker hair. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, because all right, these shows, Dave, they don't do anything by accident. Nothing. And everything, every little clue, every little thing in the background, they put things in Cree language as clues. Like that's how detailed they are. Mm-hmm. And so for me, like what Jaemeel just said, like why is the girl and the young girl have dark hair and Sylvie have blonde hair? Yes, it looks dyed, but like when did she go? Did she go into the salon? Like they don't do anything by accident on the show, and maybe that's a good theory. I like that.
Me too. Okay, so then there was also there was a big interrogation scene after he got out of the time loop where Mobius was sticking it to Loki. They had a lot of angry words exchanged with them. This is a very tense moment in their friendship, I'd say. They both feel betrayed by the other, and they're not really listening to each other. They're lying to each other. Where Loki says, I was working with her the whole time, and I had plans with her, and kind of just he's making up a story. Then Mobius says, and we pruned her because she was trying to get away. She killed a couple guards, and we had to kill her. And you see the reaction from Loki there. You see how that affects him. Then how Mobius reacts to that, where he's like, this is like the craziest thing ever. No wonder you broke the universe, where you're in love with a version of yourself.
How narcissistic are you?
How narcissistic? This is a new form of narcissistic, like a sick level.
I think it's really the opposite. Like, I mean, really, I think it's I think he's super vulnerable, and the Loki that we know from the movies would laugh at this, but he got to see behind the curtain. He got to like go down the yellow brick road, and he got to see everything, and that changes a person or a character or whatever. It changes you. And so for people to like I've been listening to a lot of different podcasts about this show, and for people to dismiss, learning that, I think is not being realistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. What about the scene with B-15 and Sylvie, where B-15 this becomes an important plot point because B-15 was enchanted in that mall in Alabama in episode 2, and that stuck with her. Yeah. Similar to what happened to C-20, but not as deep, right? She wasn't as like her past life wasn't as awoken, but she explores that. So she takes Sylvie out of custody and takes her back to that rainstorm hurricane in 2050, so that she can enchant her again. So because her powers won't work in the TVA.
Right.
So she's like, "Oh, I get it. We gotta have a fair fight." But then there's kind of a line there where she says, "We're the same. We're all variants. You and I am not your enemy. You hunt us like we're animals, but you're variants too. And we're
And
all innocent."
you know why they went back to that moment, right?
Why?
That-
Why do you think? Why do you think, Joe?
Because it's already a Nexus event, so
Right.
they won't impact the timeline. So it's kind of already
Right.
sanitized that they can work in that time frame.
And they don't have to
have that
explain it to us either. They can just,
Yeah.
we already know that's like, oh, this is a different apocalypse event.
Like they could have went to Pompeii, but that would have made no sense because C-15 hadn't been there yet, or B-15, sorry. She hadn't been there yet, so it makes sense that she chose that moment because I don't know if she knew like that theory. Like, did they say that to her directly about the apocalypse theory? Because we really only see Loki and Mobius deal with that idea.
I not on camera. Like,
no, I'm wrong. They definitely do talk about it because B-15 talks about like this is where we're going. There's a hurricane. She has a whole exposition.
Yeah, she does that whole briefing before they go on the mission.
Yeah.
There's also this scene right after with Renslayer and Mobius in her office. This is the one where he'll eventually like switch their temp pads by the end because he's having a lot of doubts about what's going on here. He's a lot of things Loki's telling him that he learned from Sylvie are starting to rattle around in his brain. He doesn't really know if he can trust this organization, but and his friendship with Renslayer is clearly important. It's despite the fact that he ruins her furniture by not using coasters. But she asks him like, if you could go anywhere, anytime, any place, what would you do? And he's like, I can go anywhere, anytime, any place, but this whole thing with the jet skis.
He doesn't want to start a Nexus event.
He doesn't want to start a Nexus event yet, but he it was set up earlier, maybe as early as episode 2, where he's like, "Yeah, I really want a jet ski," and we think that this is probably something he's tied to in his past life before he was turned into a TVA agent. But
yeah, in the early '90s, which makes me think maybe he's connected to Captain Marvel, and maybe we will see him in a Captain Marvel movie at some point.
Maybe it was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and
maybe that as well. Yeah.
Maybe he could be, or he could just been a regular average nobody that just was wrong place, wrong time, and ended up here.
Can we talk about this room that you have up on here and this scene?
Sure.
So as we know at the end, right? There's only one Kang statue, right? But in this room, we have the 3 statues of the 3 timekeepers because at this point, that's the facade that is going on, right? Mm-hmm. The middle statue is the most prominent. Like if you look at the other 2, they're kind of like they're angled, right? Like the middle one is the most important. This leads me to the theory to think that Renslayer knows what's going on, and I know she plays it like she doesn't, but that doesn't mean she doesn't. Like when she goes through that final time portal in the last episode, it seemed like she knew what she was doing. Like that's how I took it anyway. I don't know.
So I think that throughout this series, we've seen hints at the importance of the middle timekeeper.
Yeah.
In the credits, one of the last scenes before it gets to the end of the credits is the close up of the face of of that same one, who is very similar to He Who Remains as well. And it also plays into the ending of this episode and the song. The lyrics, if you love me, that's heavily emphasized, is that last image as well of that middle timekeeper,
right?
AKA
He Who Remains, which Renslayer is romantically involved with that character. And we also we think about it as it's a reference to Loki and Sylvie, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually a reference to Renslayer
and her undying support of that love. It's like, it doesn't matter, you put me in this position, it doesn't matter to me, I don't care, I know you love me, right? So
undying.
Realities come and go and fall and resets happen, but I know that you love me and that's all I need. So maybe she it's a past reset. This love that occurred, and her being a variant is put in charge because of that previous connection to a variant of Kang, right? But he knows that the connection is there, right? And every single reset, let's say she's updated, and let's say if you're a blank slate and you're told you love this person loves you, you guys can't be together, and this is the reason why he needs you here, and it's like Romeo and Juliet where they can't be together, right? And the ending is her saying, you know what, I'm gonna get the love that I deserve, and I'm gonna go seek out this love.
Yeah.
Right?
I could see that 100%. I could see that. There's more she knows that she's telling Mobius or telling anybody, even B-15 when she's talking to her. She's lying a lot of the time.
Yeah. But the line could be she only knows part of the answer.
Right.
So when she asks questions, she veils it in a like, I don't know what you're talking about, or
Right.
I know what you're talking about. Please tell me what you know. Right?
Right.
She's
Right.
like absorbing the information as
So,
well.
yeah. So she can go tell Kangs, this is what's going on, blah, blah, whatever.
Well, we see in the she doesn't talk to Kang directly. She talks through Miss Minutes to him.
Yes. Yes. But the thing is, we don't know if she knows. She's acting like she doesn't, but that doesn't mean she doesn't.
Maybe it's pretty confusing to act like you don't know to the talking clock cartoon.
When she talks to Miss Minute, she's in front of Sylvie. So, like,
not every time.
There's one moment that she's not, yes, but she's just asking for files, I believe, at that moment or something like that.
That's in the next episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this whole thing, Mobius steals the tempad. He sees the video of the C-20 interrogation, which I find funny because it's like this. What if there was video screens in the 1970s aesthetic, or there were handheld devices in the 1970s aesthetic? It's kind of interesting to see that, or kind of a 1980s a little bit too.
Just go like this.
Yeah. But this is like he goes in, he finds Loki, and again getting his nuts kicked by Sif. It's this. I felt for him. I was like, you are a changed man now, Loki. After this, I don't know how many times you had to endure this, but it seemed like a lot. So they get out, and pretty much they're encountered by Renslayer and her hunters, and it's kind of a really tense moment, and Mobius gets pruned here, gets disintegrated seemingly really quickly, and we're like, what?
One of the best scenes, dramatic scenes in the show. When this is why I say it's like for me the best episode, because like when Mobius does that whole, where I'd go? Wherever the fuck I'm from, and I'd ride a jet ski. Like that whole moment is so fantastic, so well acted, delivered, everything. It's like a chef's kiss.
Jeff, you gotta stop hitting your microphone stand so much.
Sorry.
It's like so loud every day. You like hit it all the time. I'm like, what are you doing? Renslayer. Then so Mobius is pruned. The performances between these two everyone in the scene is great. And then Renslayer then proceeds to take Loki and Sylvie up to the timekeepers to see their pruning officially. And this is where she's like, I don't remember your Nexus event. I love how she just goes, what do you want to say to me, variant? And she knows more than most that she's herself a variant as well.
Does she know that?
Yes, because she knows C-20 knew, and she was at the end of that video, right, going, "Oh, let's turn this off."
Right.
So
cover up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So she's more about like even though there's some lies in the TVA, like Renslayer's willing to cover those up for the greater good. That's the way she sees it. Yeah. But this whole scene in the elevator, it's pretty cold, and it's pretty gloomy, I guess. And then they get in there. I don't have a shot of those robot timekeepers, but they were something, hey?
I couldn't understand them. The audio, like I really had to like go watch it again.
I had to put it on with subtitles. The first time without the subtitles, I couldn't really follow because it was so echoey.
Yeah.
It was hard to like put together what their mouths were moving, what words were coming out. Once you listen to it or watch it with the subtitles, it's easy, to kind of have the reference point to the sounds because the other characters in the setting don't have that echo-ness to them.
No, like that was a problem for me. Like the sound part, like that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't have to use subtitles to understand.
I always watch these shows with subtitles. So it wasn't really that much of an issue with me.
When you saw them for the first time on the first watch, were you like, this can't be real? These can't be the time. This can't be what it.
Oh my gosh, they're tying it into Bill and Ted's, and they're the. I expected them to go like this.
Right. In time.
It's such a good point. Like Bill and Ted's another like movie universe that is very similar to what's going on here with TVA.
Yeah.
It is. Basically.
Oh yeah, they're borrowing from a few things here. It definitely looked like those like futuristic leader people from Bill and Ted up there, except that they look like lizard people or lizard bots. And like when I was watching it again, like and listening there, I don't know, the dialogue between the two Lokis and these guys is kind of whatever. But they don't really establish this. But are we to believe that those three, I guess they're puppets, really? Those timekeeper puppets, are they controlled by Kang from the Citadel?
Yeah, they're probably controlled by Miss Minutes, be my guess.
They can be. They're not really important at all.
Why?
But representations of Kang.
Why, when Sylvie chops the middle one's head off, why do they laugh? Why do they?
I think because all three are controlled by Kang.
Yeah.
From the Citadel. I think when he's just laughing at the fact that it cut off the head, and he's like, because this whole thing where he's impressed with the two Lokis and he wants them to either kill him or be his successors or both, right? That's ultimately where this is heading. So I feel like this is like almost like a job interview in some ways for
when
the both of them.
The head gets cut off. If you listen closely, you hear the head say, "See you soon." Oh,
do you? I didn't pick up on that because there was this. We didn't also talk about when B-15 shows up and she was just like, because she's like gone full rebel at this point, and she's like, for all time, always, and then she hits the guy, and then there's this whole battle with the Lokis and like the guards and everything else that goes on. Right, I think this is before they even cut the head off, but that was kind of a real badass fun moment, and I was like, oh, I like this B-15 more now.
I don't know. What a fantastic actress she is. We'll get the scene later when her and Renslayer talk to each other. But so good. Such a great moment. You're right, Dave. When she comes in and hits the collars off, and
she's just like, "Fuck you." Yeah, it's just
Also, it's kind of weird that she kind of fights two people and then she gets knocked out and she's just laying on the ground and nobody deals with her during the whole fight.
It's like.
It is
they're like not a priority.
I had to watch it multiple times. I'm like, what happened to B-15? Why is she just out of the fight right after she hits basically the collars off? She fights two guys and then all of a sudden she's on the ground and she's out cold.
And that's why she just got knocked out early in.
Yeah, that's but they don't really show her get knocked out. She just falls down. So it's like,
and then we get to this ending here for this episode where Loki is about to sort of pour his heart out for Sylvie and kind of explain what happened on Lamentus and all these things. But before he can, he gets pruned himself, and our main character is seemingly killed here right before the credits. And I was just like, what the hell? I'm still getting over Owen Wilson at this point.
And this is an homage to the WandaVision scene where Vision disappears. Very similar.
Well, and some people have pointed out that some of this technology with the pruning kind of looks like this Doctor Strange sling ring effect a little bit and things like that. So it may be more of a portal than it is a disintegration that we could have. The hints were maybe there from the beginning.
Yeah, it does kind of look like the sling ring.
It does.
Right. But we think Loki's dead, and then quickly Sylvie turns the tides on Renslayer, and she's like, "You're gonna tell me everything," because Renslayer at first says, "Kill me," but she's like, "No, I want to know what's gonna happen." We get that whole musical thing. I'm sitting there watching this credits. It was like "Let It Happen, Darling." Was that the song, or is that
No.
what they were?
No,
Wow.
it's If You Love Me by Brenda Lee. Fun facts for Jeff coming at you. Brenda Lee is the 4th highest solo artist, selling solo artist of all time. Couldn't believe it when I looked it up. Could not believe it. I'm like, who the hell is Brenda Lee? Apparently, in the 60s and 70s, she was like the biggest country star, like next to Elvis. So there you go.
Her and Patsy Cline were like,
yeah,
going blow for blow.
Yeah, and then we got the credit scene where we see that Loki is not dead, but instead we see it's these 3 Loki variants up there. I don't have the one of all 3 of them with the Boastful, but this is some of them there. A couple of them there. Jameel's already got the Funkos for these different Loki variants.
Versions of those versions. I haven't got the Loki official TV show versions of them yet.
And if you watched it with the credits, you would also know that when Loki says, "Is this hell?" he says it H-E-L, not with the 2 L's.
Where hell is from.
Where hell is from. Okay, so Journey into Mystery is our next 5th episode. As we're coming up in 2 hours and 25 minutes, maybe we can try to wrap this up as quickly as we can. But the 5th episode is called Journey into Mystery, and that's very much like this is a lot of reveals. What's been happening? What's the TVA? What's the void? Where do you go when you're pruned? A lot of that gets explained here. Loki wakes up. We get the timekeepers. We got Sylvie and Wrench. Sorry, what is her name? Is Judge
Renova
Renslayer. And this whole thing about Eliath is also revealed in we see Eliath for the first time, and classic Loki explains that's Eliath, and he's hungry, and we're lunch, and we need to get out of here. And did you guys enjoy all these other Loki variants that we got to meet, including we had Alligator Loki,
who may or may not be a Loki. They're not sure.
Okay, this one was known as Boastful Loki, although I found that all the Lokis were sort of boastful.
Yeah, but he was saying he was boasting that he killed Thor, but he was like his boast was so over the top. Like he got all of the Infinity Stones. Yes, that's why your Mjolnir is like, what is it? A piston and part of a train track. I find it highly unlikely. Highly unlikely.
Yeah, he's a big liar, is what he is. He's a backstabber. Yeah. He's kind of like all the really bad qualities of Loki wrapped up into one.
What did you think of Kid Loki?
Kid Loki was very interesting because like he killed Thor when he was a kid, but he kind of just seems like this is my penance. Like he kind of understood like why he was where he was. Yeah, like he wasn't really fighting it.
He seems a lot more mature for his age.
Yeah.
It's played by Jack Veal. And then finally, too much to the delight of many fans, we had Richard E. Grant in the role of classic Loki, wearing that classic comic book look with that bright colors. He's very good in this. A lot of fun. This whole episode where they're going through the different world and dealing with the different versions of Loki and different things that we got here. That's more of that. Sorry. Okay, we got these guys, but like there was the whole thing with also with Sylvie and Renslayer and Miss Minutes and Sylvie self pruning herself to chase Loki here, because that's what Renslayer kind of explains is that, well, when you're pruned, you don't actually die. You go to this garbage dump called the Void at the end of time, etc., etc. We see that Miss Minutes is a little bit maybe more complicit, a little bit more knows more than she does, the way she's stalling with looking up the files through a lot of it. And we see how treacherous Renslayer really is, how quickly she'll flip on you. And then we talked about the Lokis trading the stories. how Loki, the classic Loki, faked his death. We've mentioned, and then Mobius ends up saving the pruned Sylvie with his little pizza car. Where's that? I think I have a picture of that
Pizza time.
in the pizza car. So these two team out for a good part of this episode too.
Can I ask a question? Why the pizza car? Like, why do you think? Like I said, these guys don't do anything not on purpose. Why the pizza car?
don't
He
know.
just
Fun?
probably
Was it
found
just?
it,
It
but
was just
like
fun. Like I don't know. Like I wonder
maybe
why the pizza car?
maybe in Spider-Man No Way Home,
Hmm.
Peter Parker has his part-time pizza job, and that is the vehicle that's
I
in
won't.
it.
I won't be
Because you can,
surprised if this shows up in a future thing. Yeah.
yeah, and we go, oh, something happens and a decision results in it getting pruned. It could be as
Yeah,
simple as that.
Yep.
could be.
Yeah, I could see it.
Okay, so let's also mention here we also got to meet President Loki, who we thought was going to be our Loki, but he's not. He's just another variant that they run in here into the TVA.
Right.
He ends up getting his hand bitten off by Loki, alligator Loki. Did you guys enjoy him and his little gang and the little treacherous thing? And
Star Wars reference.
I enjoyed our Loki like covering his face more and like just being embarrassed by himself. Like I enjoyed that the most.
yeah, he's like, oh, because he kind of recognizes himself in this version, like that this is kind of who he used to be a little bit more.
It's who he is during the movies, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
But you bring up an interesting point. He can kind of see what Sylvie is talking about, seeing himself in these just absurd versions, right? That you can't help but feel embarrassed or disgusted by your worst traits just emphasized and magnified.
Well, you can only see your flaws in people like you or in yourself, right? And yeah, like I was saying, like the present, the future, the past, sort of embodied, and the alligator, I guess. I don't know what spirit animal. I
again,
suppose.
this is not a mistake. They put that frame you have up there right there, Dave, is on purpose.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that the three stages of a man's life. You think about like Star Trek: The Next Generation's all good things, and the different things that like I feel like maybe were themes that they were kind of coming back to here. And then everyone, but then Loki, the main Loki, I guess he's like, we're gonna kill Goliath. We're gonna if it eats something, it can die, and we're gonna kill it. And they're like,
Yeah.
sure.
I love Sylvie's reaction to that. That was your plan.
That was your plan, and then those guys are like, well, we had our doubts. We weren't really fully on board with it. We're just kind of going along. We had nothing better to do, and I don't know. So
yeah, that like you guys said, like, oh, kind of the early Sylvie stuff kind of bothered me or whatever. But like, this is the episode where I really like started to love Sylvie.
well, yeah, and the relationship, right? Marauders and because when Sylvie and Mobius show up, they go, "Uh-oh, who's in the car?" It's a sign of cannibalistic marauders or cannibalistic pirates.
Yeah, they're gonna eat you either way.
Yeah, but I was like, cannibalistic pirates wouldn't show up in a car. Wouldn't they be at sea?
What's the difference between a marauder and a pirate? Is a
Well, I don't
marauder
know.
on land and
I
pirates on
think a marauder is a land-based thing. Could be mistaken though.
Yeah.
I'm not up on my pillaging terms.
For now.
For now, give it time. You can always learn a new skill. So yeah. Anyway. Oh yeah. Okay. So she's like, we're going to enchant it. That's what we're going to do.
Mhm.
We're going to enchant Elioth. And I think to your point, like you started liking her here. She's like, yeah, we got a plan. We're going to do all this.
Well,
but they also
that,
they watched the monster kill that ship of sailors or whatever, right?
Right.
Too?
Right. And then they have that scene. It's a very long scene in this episode where Loki and Sylvie kind of have like a blanket moment, like, hey, you're cold. Here you go. Like they have that whole moment.
Which if Sylvie was a frost giant, she wouldn't feel cold.
Right. Which is why I questioned that earlier.
Nor would Loki.
Well, Loki seemed like he had an intention of doing that to get closer to her, as opposed to Sylvie, who was actually cold. Or like, was she trying to get closer to him? I don't get that impression, and that isn't the impression that we've been given throughout this entire series.
No, she's like went like in the episode before when Loki's spilling the beans to her and kind of about to say he loves her or whatever. She's like, "What?" You know, what do you want? Like,
Yeah. The whole ending of this episode is quite amazing with the action, the fact that Richard Grant creates like this distraction as they try to do this enchantment. Glorious purpose. Elioth eats him. The whole sequence, the action, it's good as any Marvel movie ever. Like it's a really the music, everything really works together, and that the fact that these two had to work together in order to achieve this goal. We see like the heavens open up, and the Citadel on the other side of it.
yeah.
And
It's so Wizard of Oz, by the way. This whole episode,
is.
like especially at the end, it's so Wizard of Oz.
and they walk into that distance, right? Like what there's going to be answers on the other side of this next week. You know, it's kind of like this feeling you're left with, like this cliffhanger. Because they did it, right? And yeah, you're sad about classic Loki, but you're like, it was worth it. The sacrifice was worth it.
We don't know. We don't know
barely
what
knew
happened.
No,
We
and he lived a long life. Like he explains, we didn't even get to this, but he explains like like they faked his stuff with Thanos, but after that, he like basically flies through space for a while, lands on a planet by himself, lives by himself for like a long, long time, and then he's like, I got bored and I wanted to leave and I wanted to go experience life. You know, I was tired of hiding. And the whole moment here where he originally says, I'm not going to help you. And then he comes back and kind of that same moment, like he went into isolation. This is my home. It's all about survival and self-preservation. And then he's like, you know what? Sod all that. Screw it. I'm going to help these people because this feels right. He's a good guy. Like he explains it multiple times, like that he went past that treachery, mischief, Loki version of himself, and he was like, it's all nonsense, basically, is what that was his opinion. And I think that's important. I think it's important to understand that the more Loki goes through his life, the more he starts to realize that he's just playing a role, and he it's not worth it. That's how I took it anyway.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about maybe the next episode too, which was for all time.
Always.
For all time. Don't forget the always.
Is it? Oh, is it? I thought it was for all time, like comma always. Is it for all time period always?
I believe so.
I've always taken it as it's like a call and response.
It's a semicolon.
It's just it's like for all time.
Always.
Oh, so it is a period. Okay.
So this is where we left off. We're at the Citadel. It's a quite amazing thing. I saw a lot of analysts online where they're like, well, it's kind of built out of like this asteroid that it's floating on top of, and it looks like it was kind of built out of the same material as the asteroid, but it kind of looks like an old castle too, and everything else. This whole episode, there's quite a bit going on, but it's mostly the two Lokis at the Citadel talking to he who remains. Did you guys like this episode's a lot of talking? Did it remind you of like maybe when Neo meets the architect in Matrix Revolutions?
Yes.
It's 100%.
But better.
It is better. It is better. When I was a kid, when I saw that scene, I mean, first of all, Matrix 2, we can go through a whole bunch of different things of why that movie's not amazing. It had a lot of good ideas or whatever, but yeah, like the execution wasn't quite right. The execution here is pretty good. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know? Also, this shot you have here, Dave, of time. See that like ribbon? It's going around in a circle.
Yeah.
So time is not a line. It's actually a circle.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle. That's what this proved to be. Anyway, I don't know how you guys took it.
Which makes sense because the resets.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, because they saw like that as the things were happening here, where that new branches were forming, that there was sort of a new rebirth to the multiverse potentially here. Hence his variants coming back and potentially being not so nice. There was this whole scene too where like Loki and Sylvie were like at the front door basically, and trying to decide if they were going to go in for a bit.
What a great jump scare with Miss Minutes that they did.
Yes.
Oh yeah, when she shows
I
up in
got
like
caught.
they eventually go through and in like the door, and then you're like they're looking around, and then finally Miss Minutes shows up. She goes, "Howdy,"
Yeah.
and I was like, I knew it, and I thought for a second it was Miss Minutes was the big bad,
No.
right?
Yeah. I knew she was.
None
And I knew they were gonna do something different than just Miss Minutes being the big bad, but like I was kind of surprised that they were gonna do Kang when they did him, because like I know he's supposed to be in the new Ant-Man and Wasp movie, so obviously like and they didn't call him Kang, but it's the same
No.
actor,
Because technically he isn't King.
oh right, I mean he's a variant.
Kang's another variant.
Yes.
Kang's a different variant. He's just He Who Remains. So
Correct.
and Nathaniel Richards is probably a different variant.
Yes, and so is He Who Remains. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they're all
Yeah, so there's many versions. Well, we talked about those timekeepers. Yeah, so here he is. Really great performance. What's this act?
Jonathan Majors. Yeah.
Jonathan Majors.
Oh my God, yeah, so good, such a great actor. I mean, really, just carries this episode for a show that has been entirely about kind of two characters, Sylvie and Loki. He has a majority of speaking lines in this episode,
And a lot of concepts that are just out there that in a lesser performer's hands would come off across as hokey or over the top, but it seemed like there's a sadness in it and a giddiness of it, excitement at parts of like a change. Like you really run the gamut of like different emotions and different feelings throughout this entire performance.
It's kind of like to me, I kind of like compare it to like Kang or He Who Remains, whatever you want to call him. He's getting to the end of the book, and the book's about to end, and he's getting excited. Like he's like, I already know. I've read this book 1,000 times, but I'm about to get to the end of the book again.
Well, he's about to learn something new for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, and
what happens?
What happens? And it's so exciting for him because he already is preventing all the things he knows is going to happen, and it's going to screw everything up. But he doesn't know what's going to happen after a certain moment in time, and he explains when that moment happens. And I don't know, I love it. I just really like the way he explains everything that's going on in a great way, because he has to. The other Lokis, the two Lokis, Sylvie and Loki, don't understand what the hell's going on really, so he has to explain it.
Yeah, and they keep trying to kill him, and he keeps like teleporting out of the way because, as we find out, he knows exactly what's going to happen. He knows everything they're going to say. Even that offer he makes to them, where like you can both be on the timeline and you can have everything you've ever wanted. He knows they're going to say no. He already like it's not a real offer in that sense but it's part of the process. It's because it is what happened.
Yeah, it's kind of like Lost. Whatever happened. So he knows that, exactly. They're going to say this. He's going to say that in reply. And that's just the way it is.
It just leads to the next scene.
Yeah. He's eating an apple through a lot of the scene, which, is always a trademark of somebody being a dick or cocky.
Yeah. And also talking about time, because that's how Doctor Strange, showed time reversing upon itself.
And it's a Goodwill Hunting reference.
Yes.
Yep. How about them apples?
Them apples. And also the apple lesson of how Miss Minutes was explaining the timeline to Loki in, I think, episode 3.
Right. And it's also a reference to Adam and Eve, because Loki and Sylvie are made of the same thing. Like that's the whole story of Adam and Eve, that God fashioned Eve from Adam's rib, and that's the whole story of Adam and Eve. So there's a whole bunch of references going on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Also, just there's kind of another storyline that's happening while Loki and Sylvie are talking to He Who Remains, which is, I guess, more of this like Mobius and Renslayer kind of thing, because Mobius comes back from the void. He was saved. We kind of skipped over it, but there was a nice hug in the last episode between Loki and Mobius and whatever. So but Mobius said he was coming here to burn the place down.
Yeah, burn it down.
His favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, "Are you here to prove me?" He's like, "I like that idea. I like it a lot, but I think my standards are gonna be better than yours."
Isn't it
And
interesting? Isn't it interesting? Like he at one point he does try to prune her or whatever, right? And she does the exact same move that Sylvie basically did to her.
she's
Where like
learning
yeah,
Yeah.
or is she learning, or is Sylvie just a way better, you know,
at hand to
martial
hand.
hand to
Yeah.
hand martial arts, and Renslayer is just better than Mobius, and
But
you
you
know what
would
I mean?
also think that Mobius is not gonna like Renslayer was a hunter. Mobius is
Right.
just an investigator, an
He's
agent.
yeah,
So
he's
you
a
would assume that she would womp him in
yeah,
comparison.
yeah. Good point.
Yeah, like I thought that their scene, I thought the way it capped off, I thought her little speech about how well they talked about how they were exposing the whole variant thing to the TVA guards and everything else through B-15 went to that Fremont, Ohio thing. And she says that there's no such thing as free will. Free will only exists for the person in charge. And that's kind of what Renslayer believes. Plus, she was given information from Miss Minutes, which we also skipped over, where, I guess coming from He Who Remains, the Nathan Richards variant, saying, like, hey, you need to get out of there, and this is where you go. So we don't know what happens to Renslayer exactly, other than she was sort of given a place to hide, potentially.
Or she was meeting her potential new love interest, the one who conquered.
The one who conquers.
Yeah.
Potentially, yes. We'll see. I expect we'll see back Renslayer in season 2, along with all these characters, and maybe a lot more Jonathan Majors. I would expect as well.
Do we need Jonathan Majors in season 2? Not really.
I don't know if we need him, but I expect he's going to be in season 2 quite a bit.
It depends what they do in Ant-Man,
Yeah.
and Wasp. It really does.
Or this takes place before or
Well,
after.
just the way that he set it up, he's like, there are so many of my evil variants out there and whatever. Like, I don't think they're gonna tease that and not pay it off. Like, we're gonna see that.
I do think it's important, like some of the things that he says to them too. Like one is that he's from the 31st century,
Mhm.
that he's a scientist. That there are certain things he says to them that points to me that he is Nathaniel Richards.
Yes.
That that he is the descendant of Reed Richards and Sue Storm.
Which is crazy because we haven't even met Reed Richards in the MCU yet, at least. But we're getting his descendant here first, who also in the comic books may also be a descendant of Doctor Doom.
Yes, there's a bunch of different things going on, but yeah, it's so great because and I love that they don't really name who he is and make it
because it's not important right now.
Right.
But it's going to be. So you're setting up a whole new. He's almost like the new big bad. And this is
he's the new Thanos, and it's not this guy. He died.
Yeah.
It's the versions of him.
Well, and one other thing I will say, the Flash and the CW and all the Berlantiverse and things like that. But like with the like the Thawne character, or I guess it's more the not the Thawne, the other one he pretends to be. You know who I mean. But Tom Cavanaugh plays him on the Flash. Tom Cavanaugh, the actor, he plays like the multi versions of this same guy. Like this is Earth 1's version, Earth 2. He does it more than any of the other actors on that show. And you can have a lot of fun with that, but then it can also become quite hokey and kind of not as entertaining. So they have to show some restraint with how many variants you do, how many silly variants you're going to throw into things. Because even when we were seeing like there was a Hulk Loki and there was a this Loki and there's an alligator Loki, and I'm like, okay, but so how many versions of this Nathan Richards are we gonna get? Eventually.
Wells.
Lots.
Wells. I'm sorry. I was like,
sorry, I couldn't.
Because he's almost like this character that we meet in this episode. He's like almost like a like a godlike, omnipotent being. Doesn't seem like a man, but he's eating an apple, and Loki says, "You're just a guy. You're just a." He also says he's a lot older than he looks. That somehow aging maybe is. He's lived 1,000,000 lifetimes. He also says in dialogue.
But Kid Loki is not aged at all.
They lived like outside of time, like we kind of see that through like Renslayer and Mobius and like different characters. It's like, where are they really from? Like, also we didn't mention this, but like Sylvie says that C20 is from hundreds of years in the past. Yet they're having margaritas, which what looks like to be in the early 90s. Isn't that weird? Like,
Right. So, but like, let's say you were taken out of the 1990s, Jeff, and then you were made a TV agent. You would stop aging,
right.
right?
And it might have been
You could
hundreds of
work
years
there for
ago.
hundreds of years.
It
Yeah.
could have been hundreds of years ago because it might have been a different timeline. If time is going in a circle and each
Yeah.
time, like, you know, it gets to the end of the circle, it starts anew. That might be
Right, because you're thinking your logic is like, oh well, all the TVA recruits would have to be from prior to 2021 because
Right.
this show was kind of set in 2021, but not really.
It's set in 2022 or 20. It's set in the future a little bit.
Well, it's kind of set in 2012 in the sense that
Right.
that's where it starts, you know.
Right.
But
but the time in between that period and when they come up for breath, right? That could be a never-ending time. The period of what we see Loki could have happened over 500 years, right?
so imagine you are one of these variants, right? And you get, first of all, once you get your mind wiped, right? You know, maybe you were like, let's say I'm this age, I'm 38 years old, like I get turned into a TV agent. After, if you're like Renslayer, who's maybe been doing this for eons, are you really that person that you started off? Even if you got your memories back from your original life, you wouldn't be that person anymore because, you know, it's
what I suspect is that elements from your personality, from your original timeline, they just become quirks. Like, so Owen Wilson's Mobius was, you know, a surfer dude who, like, a shield agent who used to surf all the time, and now the only remnants of that whole persona is just like, I want a jet ski. I would love to jet ski. This is what
he needs a vacation, you know, he's a workaholic.
Well, yeah.
Okay, and then the whole thing with Sylvie and Loki at the end, the whole ending where he's like, okay, there's two options. Either you kill me and you kill me and you unleash this multiversal war and you unleash all my variants, and who knows what happens, or you just take over, you just take the throne. But what I didn't get is if, okay, you take over, right, and you take the throne, so to speak, you run the TVA instead of me. Where does he go? If that happened, if they had made that choice instead of, like, ultimately Sylvie kills him after she drops Loki through a portal. But if they had said, okay, yeah, we'll take over now,
I think he could go wherever he wants. Yeah.
He could just retire. He could get the jet ski.
I think, yeah, that would have been a cool way to end it. Instead of killing him, like, he's just like running around on a jet ski.
He just retires.
That would be great. Yeah. What do you think about the conundrum, though? But the argument between Loki and Sylvie, like where Loki's trying to say to Sylvie, like, maybe we should run the TVA. Like, maybe.
Well, it's not even that he really wants to run the TVA, although I think he kind of does.
He's saying it to her, like, we're gonna unleash something here that's worse than the fate that we've already had. You know?
Well, he's also had the experience of Avengers 1, right? And he knows that, like, he made this deal with Thanos, and you see it in Avengers 1 where Thor goes, like, look what you did. Like, look at, you're destroying this entire city, you know, and you see that Loki's like, maybe I shouldn't have done this, you know, and because I was just angry. My need to get vengeance against my father and everybody I blame for my problems and whatever, clouded everything.
Yeah. Also, like, yeah, I agree with you, Dave, because he's trying to say to Sylvie, like, I've been where you are. I know what you're feeling. Like, I think these are exact dialogue things that he says to her. And like, it makes sense because, like, yeah, you're right, Dave. He has had way different lived experience than Sylvie has. Sylvie has been a girl on the run through time since she was a young girl. Loki grew up to be an adult, had Thor as a friend, was on his side, turned on him, turned on Odin. They're very different storylines, you know. And it makes sense that they have different points of view on this huge moment that both of them were wronged by the TVA. He even says that to her as well. He's like, we were both screwed over by the TVA, but maybe what lies for us on the other side of this vengeance door is worse.
Well, he's like, you remove the dictator. What's, sometimes what
Power vacuum.
comes after is not better.
It's a power vacuum, and it's actually a great metaphor for like literally modern day and like what happens when they do remove dictators and what happens to countries. It's power vacuums occur, and then the country's usually worse off. It's a great metaphor for the universe. If you take away the big dictator, he who remains, and there's a power vacuum, guess what? Chaos. That's what's going to end up happening.
Right. It's also some pretty good like action too between these two. A lot of emotional. It's a pretty scene, and then eventually like Loki just throws it away and says, I don't want to hurt you, and she kind of stops from cutting him in half or so with her blade. But as I think it was B-15 who said to Renslayer in the earlier episode, was like, she is vengeance. She doesn't just want answers, she needs answers, and she needs resolution, and she needs this. And her motivations make sense for who she is and what her story is, and so do his.
Yep.
So it all culminates here, and I just like how like he who remains is just like, he's just amused by the whole thing.
Watching.
He's just like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Let's see. Like, I might die, I might not. He doesn't care.
But at that point, he's also tired of the burden.
That's what he says. That's his literal line. He says, "I'm tired. I'm tired of this. I've seen everything. I don't care anymore." Basically.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? And he's like, "You better hurry. There's new timelines forming. We're gonna get going. And new branches forming." But she drops him through the portal. He ends up in the TVA. After the kiss, they kissed.
Mm-hmm.
Did they kiss?
Yeah.
Did she kiss
Yes,
him?
you block all this out, Jaemeel. You don't want to believe that this is a great romance.
I kind of see what Jameel's saying. Did she kiss him because she had romantic feelings for him, or did
yes?
Okay, that's what your opinion.
Yes.
I think me and Jaemeel are kind of on the same page here.
That Loki has feelings for her,
Yeah.
but she does not feel the exact same way. And
she totally does. You saw the look on her face with that blanket on when they were.
If she really loved him, if you love me, really love me, right?
I don't care.
I don't care. That's a great song. Like, the lyrics in that song are important, and like what happens in that moment is she doesn't care about that love. She cares about her vengeance more. She chooses her vengeance more than her love. And that's very, very important. And so, like, yes, you could say that, Dave. Yeah, she kissed him, and that like, but maybe that does solidify their love for each other or something.
Solidified. I'm
not.
shipping it.
It's not. It's not. She basically chooses her vengeance, and it's a very familiar motif to our Loki, because that's what he does a lot of the time with Thor. You just mentioned it. Look at when Thor's like, "Look around," right? He still stabs him in the side of the gut. Yeah. So, like, these are the things that are consistent with Loki's.
True. That Loki is an interesting, or he or she or they. Okay, let's talk about maybe like like she kills him. I think we've kind of talked through that, and then sort of this heartbreak, I guess, that Loki feels. Maybe this is also the time to just talk about Tom Hiddleston in this show more specifically, because we haven't really talked about this. We have, and we haven't like kind of maybe focused on him. But this is sort of the end of the story for season 1, where he shows up back in the TVA. We saw all these new timelines diverging now that he who remains has been killed by Sylvie. He doesn't know what happens. He doesn't know how to get her back. And then he shows up to Mobius and to B-15, who are trying to deal with the situation, it seems like. He's like, we couldn't. He starts explaining things to him. And then he goes, who the hell are you?
Are you an agent? An analyst?
Are you one of our analysts? Like, where, and then, and things. So it seems like Loki has been erased from history. And we also see that the Timekeeper statues have been replaced with statues of He Who Remains, who we believe to be Nathaniel Richards, right? So, or Kang, or any variant thereof, because he said that all of his boogeyman variants, the bad ones, were going to now be unleashed, and perhaps this is one of his variants who now founded the TVA, or history's been changed in some way,
or it is He Who Remains, and he's some sort of figurehead, and and maybe I don't know.
But why don't they know who Loki is?
It's a good question, and we're gonna find out the answers to those questions at some point. But right now, we just have theories. Like, yeah, like why doesn't? How often does this happen? That's my question. How
Yep.
often do these resets occur?
So just want to also I just double checked. In Renslayer's office, there is no statues once Loki returns. So there's no statues inside of that office.
When do we see her office at the end?
You mean Owen Wilson showed up at the end? Like,
No, when Loki is pushed back, he's pushed back to.
But they don't. Did they go to her office?
That's where he ends up. He ends up in her office.
Does he like when he first gets sent there by Sylvie.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I
thought it was the other interrogation room he ends up back in.
I didn't notice. Like, yeah, I'd have to look at that. But like, that's really interesting if that's true. And it's there's so many little things there. Like, yeah, and B-15 has no idea who he is, and the dejection on his face when he realizes.
I should say it's a room. Sorry.
Oh, okay. When Mobius he says to him, like, "Are you an analyst? Like, who are you?" That just Loki doesn't even try to explain it. He just turns around and walks away. He's just like, "Fuck."
Yeah, he's like, "I'm in a pickle now." It's where we're because
I loved his reaction. Like I the way he like you're talking about Tom Hiddleston, the way he played that again, a chef's kiss, like so good.
Yeah, like he obviously cares a lot about this character, but this was also like I feel like one of the smartest things you could do with a new version of Loki, considering that original arc stands for what it is.
Yeah.
And now we get this new time travel Doctor Who version of Loki, who is very similar but different in many significant ways. Like he's lived a very as this show continues to go on, we're going to think of him more and more as not Loki. We're going to think of him as something else, I think, or a variant, the variant Loki, or whatever we're going to get to call him eventually.
There's certain moments like this Loki never did. He only learned about.
Like, yeah, he only saw them. Like, and what would that experience be like? You know, you see this future that you never lived, but this is what your life would have been.
Like okay, so when he sends his like the Dark Elves and he thinks they're going to Thor, but they go kill his mother instead. The next movie, like he is like literally depressed. Like he's creating this facade for Thor, but then they remove it, and he's literally like in a really dark hole. In this version of Loki, he never has time for that. You know?
No, he doesn't get to spend months in a cell just like well, he got kicked in the nuts a lot by Sif. He had a different kind of penance, right. You know? He didn't. He like you find out like, yeah, you're gonna lead your mother, like these dark elves, to kill your mother, but you never experienced that. But that is how she died. Yeah, some other version of you that doesn't, and you don't have that memory, because it was weird when they were showing his greatest hits, like the whole. We didn't talk about his was it DB Woodward? Is that was the name?
DB Cooper. Yeah.
DB Cooper. There was DB Cooper, who he was, right? So he's like, I remember doing that, but I obviously don't remember doing these other things. So he's
DB Cooper was a prank, though.
Yeah. Well, I thought when they threw that into the first episode, I was like, maybe we're gonna get more of this, more of these like flashbacks of what Loki's been doing his whole life, his very long life. Yeah. But no, that was the only one like that.
Yeah, there could be more like that they could do in season 2. Like maybe he was, Hitler or something, something crazy. Like he's a mischief maker, right? So, like maybe he was involved in a lot of big events throughout history that we have no idea about or whatever. And they might throw another one in. I wouldn't be surprised, if they explain that Loki, because he is compared to the devil and he's compared to a whole bunch of different things. So
right.
I can see them doing that.
Yeah. Jaemeel, are you excited for more of this show?
Dude, it's ridiculous. I'm like, dude. I mentioned this before, and I think I mentioned this last week for Black Widow. If Marvel said, hey, you know what? We're going to stop making movies and just make TV shows of whatever we want, I wouldn't necessarily be against that, right? Because the amount of the quality of these shows, plus also the writing and the performances that we're seeing, there is not a drop-off. In some respects, there's an increase in terms of the ability to showcase these performances better than they have in the movies, right? None of the Marvel movies are going to get nominated for any awards, right? But these television performances are so layered and nuanced and able to progress throughout these episodes that yes, they are award worthy, right? Well, more so this one than let's say Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yes.
No offense, Don Cheadle.
I think of those, he got on the Emmy ballot.
That was ridiculous.
But yes, I'd say that like now that we have Loki and we have WandaVision and we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier, all these Disney Plus properties to compare to, and Black Widow, which is a recent movie. Like, what is the future of the MCU? How is everyone going to absorb this content? I think that they already got the fan base. I think the people are going to watch it.
That being said, I absolutely know that a letdown is going to be happening because I do not see some of the newer slate being as well received as what we've currently seen. I don't think people are going to really like She-Hulk at all. I know I will, but I think a lot of people
She-Hulk.
like
well,
it.
she's not my favorite character to start, but
Right?
you know,
I don't think
they've made other characters though that I didn't really like, really likable. So you never know.
Yeah. So don't they until they have another Inhumans. Let's give them a.
Inhumans was done by a completely
and it was done by. It wasn't even like the current team's fault. Okay, maybe we want to just get over to some ratings and talk. Now that we've talked about all these episodes and how good was this? Jaemeel, do you want to start us off for your rating on Loki?
It seems like I'm going to be the high point of this rating. Actually, I'm going to give this an 8.5.
8.5. Okay, and I'm going high on this. I'm going 9.5.
Wow. Okay.
Actually, not with us tonight. Jeff, do you want to give a rating for Loki?
Okay, I'm gonna give my rating for all four that you have up here.
Start with Loki.
Okay, Loki 9.7.
Wow. Okay.
9.7.
Okay.
How about Black Widow?
5.5.
The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
7.
7, and WandaVision.
I'm gonna give WandaVision a 9.
Yeah, I'm gonna give. I haven't given my rating for some reason, but I'm also gonna give a 9 point. I think it's as good as Loki, so I'll give it 9.5.
I'll give it an 8.
You're saying less than Loki, so you preferred Loki. Ashley's not here, but she can give us a rating at another time. So based on those averages here, this Loki is the best thing that we've seen in 2021 so far from just our collective opinions. But what do you think out there in the comments? And let us know what you thought of Loki and all these new properties. And what's next, Jaemeel? What are we going to be watching? Do you know? Is it going to be Spider-Man?
No, it's going to be Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi.
Yes.
And the 10 Rings.
Even though we will have episodes of What If is a 10 episode season. So it's going to take a while until that season ends. So Shang-Chi, which will be coming during Labor Day, which is in September, we'll have that. And possibly before Eternals will be the end of What If. And then we have Eternals. And
I think we're getting What If sooner. I thought What If would be
starts
before.
in August. But the 10 episodes would cover past Shang-Chi.
So Shang-Chi will air before that finishes. Okay, correct. Just like Black Widow.
Yes.
And we were watching Loki before Black Widow came out. Okay, Jeff, are you excited for Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings?
No.
Not yet.
I think I have to watch it. I don't know enough about.
I don't know anything
what
about Shang-Chi.
It is. I know it's like the Chinese martial arts magic movie, and that's about it.
I'm excited. I'm super pumped for this because I have a theory that we're gonna see some Kunlun.
What?
Kunlun? So you feel like it's gonna tie in with Iron Fist?
Very loosely. I don't think Iron Fist is going to technically show up.
Will Sigourney Weaver be back?
No, there will not be any ties to that, but I think we're going to see Kung Lao.
Okay. I think that's a whole part of the Marvel universe and the Marvel comic books that they haven't really done a ton with yet, like the Chinese and martial arts mysticisms and different things that they have in some of, like, with the Mandarin and different characters. Like, I think that there's a lot of interesting potential there, more to be explored there. Just like this TVA brought this whole new time travel aspect, this completely new corner of the universe that's going to be very separate and distinct from other parts of it, which I think that the diversity in Marvel is what its strength is. Like, is that all these things culminate for these big events.
I think this is the introduction of time. Shang-Chi is the introduction of the of not just mysticism, but the what we're gonna see very fallout in terms of Blade eventually.
Right, because we got vampires coming, we got more of this Doctor Strange stuff coming.
It's gonna be more street level, and then Eternals is continuing the space aspect, which I think is going to be what we're going to see after Kang.
I hope. Okay, so with the Eternals, I really hope that they explain the Celestials.
I think they will.
I hope they will, and if they do, like, I'm going to be right on board with that movie. And I think they will, because there's too many good actors and too much money going into that movie for them to not, like, make it good. So I hope it's really good.
That's there for your consideration for the Emmys and Golden Globes, I think.
Yeah. So we're gonna be back here on Super Mario Brothers podcast to talk about the next Marvel installments when those hit and when those finish airing, if they're shows or movies respectively, coming up in the next few months. Really exciting stuff. And eventually we'd like to go back and maybe rewatch some of the older stuff, but there's like 25 movies that we're kind of getting here late to the game, so that might happen slowly. But that would be the intent, hopefully, eventually. And keep watching us. Now, here on Super Mario Brothers Podcasting, we don't just talk about Marvel. If you watch a little show called Big Brother Season 23, you can check us out, because we're talking about that 3 times a week, Sundays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, every time it airs on CBS and then Global up here in Canada. You can check out our hot takes on Big Brother 23. Jeff, Jaemeel, and I, as we're covering that for the next 12 weeks. Guys, you loving the season so far?
Yeah.
Say yes. Just say yes. It's all great. And then
Frenchie's my favorite player.
Yes, Frenchie. Yeah, good thing I have him in the draft. And then also we have our other channel called Trivial Debates. That's a monthly show where we argue about movies, TV, sports, and more. Coming up next Sunday, July 25th I say we're saying 10 a.m. Why not? An early start is good. We got Jody, Adam, and Jeff competing.
Quick fun fact about Adam Woodward. I was watching this new Guy Ritchie movie called Wrath of Man. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet.
I've seen it.
You know, like the main kind of guy, that not Jason Statham, but the other main guy that's in it, not Scott Eastwood. I forget his name, but he's been in Mindhunter.
Yeah,
but he reminds me so much of Adam Woodward. Like, I don't know why. Like, they don't have like the same voice, but they reminds me of him. So I was just watching. I'm like, that's like Adam Woodward. He's kind of like that guy.
There you go. Here you go. Adam Woodward going to be battling Jeff and Jody in next Sunday's debate, with Mike hosting for the first time ever. Check that out. Plus, we also have our Star Trek channel, Live Long and Podcast, where we talk about, on Mondays, we talk about Star Trek, the original series, watching every episode, not in order. We're doing that, what lies beneath. Something like that. Well, check that out Monday night at 8 p.m. We're going to be talking that. And then Tuesdays, D Space 9 at 9-ish, where we talk about every episode of D Space 9 in order. We're on the second last episode of the 3rd season, Jeff. Coming up to Facets.
We're talking about Dax. It's going to be fun. We're talking
Dax. It's going to be all our past hosts. It's a fun one. And very soon we're heading into season 4. Cisco's getting promoted. He's getting full hawk. He's shaving that head. And Worf's coming to the show. And it's going to be a whole new era in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
pretty soon.
We've gotten through the chuffa, and we're ready to move on.
This is all chuffa. All right. So those are all our channels and content. I didn't miss anything, I don't think.
Nope.
Thanks for being with us. We hope you were what did this end up being? Like almost 3 almost.
Is this the Dave Mader experience? Is that what we're doing today?
Well, these when we cover a whole show, it just takes longer to get through it. It took us even long. I feel longer with WandaVision because that was the first one, and we had nine episodes to talk about. So there was a lot of show to cover there. Even with here, I was like, okay, let's run through the 6 episodes. But every time we were on an episode, there's just a ton of notes and thoughts. And
WandaVision was probably a little easier because it's very compartmentalized. Like the whole idea of that show is like, we're in the 50s, we're in the 60s, we're in the 70s.
And there's this mystery that goes on for half of it, right?
You're better discussing the mystery throughout the show. So, yeah.
Yeah. Where it's like, Loki, like the concept is so like highbrow.
So different.
Yeah.
And very different for like the Loki character because he's like this Asgardian Shakespeare in the Park character. Now he's like in like this brown and orange science fiction setting.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for Loki. We're gonna wrap it up. Thanks to both of you, Ashley. We missed you tonight, so we hope you feel better. We'll hope you'll be back for Shang-Chi and all those things. And thanks to Loki's for being. You hit a rock, you hit a Loki around here.
Glorious purpose.
Glorious purpose. Okay, and with glorious purpose, we sign off for tonight. And I don't know what the Marvel saying is, but for all time.